Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I've had a pretty busy week interviewing people. It's been enjoyable.
It's happening. I'm
Definitely.
so impressed. I'm so proud of you for getting it done. You know, people have been talking about it. Lots of different people have talked about it. You're actually doing it. Congratulations on that alone.
Well,
You
thank
know?
you, thank you. It's just it's something it's been kind of seeping inside for quite a bit of time, and I just said one day I was like, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna write a book about our scene. So it's been
I love
fun.
it. I love it. Meanwhile, in LA, my son has been creating a scene.
Oh, good.
Yeah, like the hardcore punk scene is happening in LA now. Dead City Punks is being credited with a lot of that. So that's really cool.
That's
He's got
fantastic.
Yeah, he's second generation, so
Oh,
and
same here. I'm second generation.
yeah. They had in the there was a documentary about Dead City Punks, and he was like, "Yeah, my mom and dad met on the punk scene in Detroit," and people in the audience cheered. It was really fun. Anyways, yeah. So, what would you like to know?
Well, usually how I start my interviews is I ask people to tell me a little bit about themselves, like what they did in the scene, and then when they were in the scene, and I just kind of pick up from there and ask them like what kind of music they were into, and
Awesome.
just kind of like their experiences, you know.
Yeah. And before we go further, tell me how to pronounce your name.
My name is pronounced Crichton.
Right. Okay.
And I was going to ask you how to pronounce your name.
Thomai, for English speakers, Thomai, like Tommy, but with an A, Thomai.
Thomai.
In Greek, it's Thomai, but Thomai is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to mispronounce your name because I've had people do it to me before.
I know.
Especially my last name.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Wodarski.
Oh, that's not hard. If you're from Michigan, you know a lot of Polish names, so it's easier if you're from Michigan. But people who aren't from Michigan or from areas that don't have as many Polish names, I can see where it would be hard.
Oh, sure.
You know. But I've always known people with names that had multiple syllables and ended in ski or os or akis, Greek or Polish. Anyways, so I'm really glad to meet you over the phone, and I hope we get to meet in person. I'm going to be in Detroit in May to visit with Benson, who's my spirit brother.
Oh, Benson. I love Benson. Benson's known my mom for a long time.
Yeah. Ben and I met when I was 16 and he was 18. But let's see. Your first question is what did I do in the scene, right? So I started out as a record collector. I was the only girl, a teenage girl at record conventions. And so I kind of stood out. And I started collecting David Bowie, Billie Holiday, and old Genesis when I was 12. And then I got into more punk and obscure bands as I got older. And I continued collecting albums until my son was about 2 years old. So I worked at Harmony House Records. You may have heard of Harmony House Records.
I've heard of it.
Harmony House was really great. It was a family-owned record store, but there were several different locations, and I became imports buyer and 45s buyer. And by imports buyer, I got to, I used to read New Music Express, NME, and Southern punk rock rags that came out of London mostly. And I would order music like I would order the Swans, and I was the first one to order This Mortal Coil, and you know, bands like Dead Can Dance, and oh, I'm blanking on that other band that's like Dead Can Dance. Come on, Thomai. They did Persephone. I'm blanking. They're like all the punk and goth imports I was ordering them for Harmony House Records. And I was into the Smiths, and I was into everything. I listened to all kinds of music. So because I started out listening to, you know, I grew up in a Greek American household, so you know, we listened to Greek music, and my mom was a big Elvis fan. She loved Hank Williams Sr. and George Jones and George Thorogood, and I loved the old musicals, and I really loved old movies. So I had an album by Doris Day. I was a big Jerry Lewis fan, and I had an album by Jerry Lewis. And like, when I started making mixtapes, it would be like Tom Waits, Doris Day, David Bowie, Jerry Lewis, Susie and the Banshees. Like, it was just all over the place, but I did it in a way that it worked, you know?
Yeah.
I got really into goth, you know, I was really into Bauhaus, and I wore capes, and I wore long capes with bustiers, and I had a couple different looks that I was mostly known for. One, I was considered androgynous, which is now, I prefer the term non-binary, but back then, androgynous was what I was called by other people. And that's because I wore a lot of suit coats, and I shaved my head and eyebrows off. That's actually how I met your mom.
Oh.
Yeah, we met. So we went to a psychic TV show at Trax, and I met your mom in the bathroom, which is, you know, great. You know, women's bathrooms are like a really morale-boosting place to be. And your mom was like, "Oh, you don't have eyebrows either." She told me she couldn't grow eyebrows, and we talked about different ways to draw them on, and it was fun. But that was the psychic TV show. I was a big psychic TV and This Mortal Coil fan. I loved industrial music. I got to hang out with Blixa, with Susanne Neubauten and Nick Cave, just as friends, totally platonic. But when I quit Harmony House Records, I walked in with Blixa.
Mm-hmm.
They did a show, the famous show. I think you posted about it, actually. There's a show at the Asylum, and Jillian Kleiner, who I think you should talk to.
Okay.
Jillian Kleiner, she's the German connection. Jillian Kleiner and I went around Detroit with Blixa Bargeld, looking for, quote, instruments, unquote, for Susanne Neubauten. So we got a broken guitar from a pawn shop. We got a grocery cart that we picked up from some parking lot, stuff like that. And then we went to the show at the Asylum. We had a great time. We were hanging out afterwards, and I was like, "Oh man, I have to go to work in the morning. I don't want to. I want to quit my job." They were making me wear a wig to sell records because I'd shaved my head, and that's like so insulting. This was years before Sinead O'Connor, so it wasn't normalized yet. Not that it's ever really been normalized, but I was like, it was too freakish for the manager at that Harmony House. And I was like, you know, plus today the Sex, like they've started putting out music on CDs, and albums are dying, and they put like the Sex Pistols on CD. It's like done. I just want to quit. And Blixa was like, "I'll go with you." So after a night of hanging out, we went to Harmony House, and I quit my job very dramatically with Blixa, right, standing behind me, being Blixa Bargeld himself. being a weirdo that he is. It was really fun. Anyways, but like, I was a performance artist always. I was a storyteller. I would write these crazy ideas and then turn them into shows that were, like, I had multimedia performance art installations that I did at the Willis Gallery. The Willis Gallery no longer exists. I wonder if the co-op, is the food co-op still on Cass and Willis?
I'm not sure.
So there was a food co-op. The Cass corridor was considered a very dangerous neighborhood at the time. So there were a lot of punks living in that area. It's by Wayne State University. And there was a food co-op, and then there was also an art gallery called the Willis Gallery right next door to the co-op. And I did performances there. I did performances at Todd's. I did performances at the Urban Art Gallery in downtown Detroit. I did just all over the place. All over Detroit, Minneapolis, New York, Chicago. And my goal was not to entertain people, it was to shift consciousness. So whether it was 4 people on stage or 40 people on stage, there was always an installation, there was always multimedia things happening. So I would have a live band, but then I would also have recorded music that I made with Dave Martinico from Glad.
Oh, I talked to him.
Yeah. So Dave and I worked on soundtracks for my pieces, and what's his name? He's a famous DJ now. Why am I blanking on his name? So I probably should have written some things down for you. I'm just trying to remember stuff off the top of... Derek May, that's his name. Derek May used to do sound, make music with me for my projects. And then Benson and I got together. We would conceptualize these performance art pieces to showcase his costume design, or his clothing. He called it clothing design, I called it costume design. So he had a store in Todd's, and we would come up with an idea together, and then we would cast the actors together, or models together, and then I would come up with the set, the music, any other visuals that we had on stage. I would direct and choreograph. And Benson would make the costumes, and we called them fashion extravaganzas. So that was fun. And I was already touring, like I would go to New York, PS 122, and the Blue Angel, and do shows there. And I went to Chicago and did shows there, in Minneapolis. I got to perform at First Avenue and stuff like that. It was fun. For a hot minute, I had a band called Super Cooch. And the song that people reacted to the most was Suck My Clit. That was fun. But I did that because as a performance artist, there were so many moving parts to put together in avant-garde theater that I got kind of jealous that my friends who had bands would just like write a song, practice it, and perform it. And I was like, that seems easy. It's not, by the way. I was wrong. I was a teenager. I was totally wrong. It's not easy. But my band was more like a performance art piece. It was like I didn't want to have a band. I just wanted to do a performance of a band, if that makes sense. And we were received really well. And we performed all over the place. And then I'm kind of jumping all over the place, aren't I? So I started collecting music when I was 12. I remember when I got my first Dead Kennedys album. That was like life-changing for me. And then when I first heard Tom Waits, that blew my mind. And when I first heard Psychic TV and Coil and Chris and Cozy and just Japan. Do you listen to Japan? Are you a Japan fan?
Oh, I love them.
Oh my God, David Sylvian and Mick Karn and Ryuichi Sakamoto. I mean, I was so into Japan. You might want to interview Tony Drake. He's a great musician and artist. He's been at the DIA for like 20 years. He turned me on to Japan, and I became obsessed with the fretless bass, and Tony was a fretless bass player. I got to meet Mick Karn and Peter Murphy when they did the Dolly's Car project. Did you ever listen to that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so when they were doing that, Mick Karn is a half Cypriot. His family is from Cyprus, which is, half that island is Greek and the other half is Turkish. And so we connected in that way, and I get to have a really fun conversation and hung out a little bit. And Jillian has good stories about Peter Murphy, like when he drank champagne out of her shoe. But that's a whole other story. That's for Jillian to tell. What else? Yeah, I did my first, when I was 14, I started leaving home. And because I would go to, I remember I took the train to go to Wax Trax in Chicago. And one time I took the train when I was 14, it was like 1980. I took the train to Chicago to see Bauhaus. Wow. And I wasn't old enough to get in, but I snuck in. I was cute and I got away with a lot for that. So I got to see Bauhaus, which was like a miracle. I got to see all of my favorite musicians, except I haven't seen Tom Waits yet, but I got to hang out with Nick Cave. I got to meet Peter Murphy, and I got to see Bauhaus and Dolly's Car. The music that I listened to, like I listened to the Addicts a lot.
Oh yeah.
And the lead singer of the Addicts introduced my son's band's documentary in LA last week. I was like, I was a surprise guest. I was screaming. I was like, what? My son was like, yeah, you used to clean the house to this, to his music. I'm like, oh my God, this is a full circle moment. So that was really cool. But yeah, I listened to, so I've always been, and maybe it's, I'm neurosparkly or neurodivergent. I like to think of those of us who are neurodivergent as just our minds aren't colonized. We're not totally linear. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've been very lucky. I've had some really good success. And I'm not deficient or disordered. I'm definitely not like a typical Anglo-colonized mind. And so, forgive me for this interview going all over the place.
Oh, no, it's fine.
So, like, when I was 14, I started going to record conventions when I was 12, but then at 14, I would go to all the independent little record stores that were amazing in Detroit and in Chicago. Wax Trax was really big. We also went to Windsor for imports. Like, I went to Windsor to get the Ministry 12-inch single, Right Round, Right Round. I forget the name of the song. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it wasn't released in the States yet. So we went, me and my roommates went across the border to buy it because I couldn't even order it through Harmony House. Anyway, so at 14, I got to see Bauhaus. I would spend time, I would get on trains and buses and go to Ann Arbor for shows. I would go to, I went to St. Andrews a lot. I went to, and then I started going to Todd's. I think I was about 16 or 17 when I started going to Todd's. And I was a lot younger than everyone else, but I always had these ideas of things to do on stage. and I got people to accept my direction and collaborate with me. And we made these really amazing collaborations, like multimedia performance art installations, and we made really great soundtracks. The soundtrack that I made with Dave Martinico, you could hear, we had 2 microphones on, and I was reciting a poem that we were doing a cut-up Bill William S. Burroughs style. Yeah, I got into cut-ups, really big into the cut-up modality of writing. And then my friend Fork, who's a poet, she's released a book called Alethea about the process that we used. We would like record ourselves then at random, and then take that recording and edit it at random with other recordings and just layer. And so I was doing that with a poem with Dave, and it picked up my heartbeat. And so we kept the heartbeat in it. So there was a layer of heartbeat, and then we put instrumentation on it. And then, you know, it was just really, it was very creative. And because we were not concerned with entertaining the audience or making money, I hadn't monetized any of my talent. I was making money, like I worked at 7-Eleven, I worked at Todd's, I bartended for a minute at Todd's. I bartended at Bookie's in the basement when I was 16. Yikes. I couldn't drink yet, but I could bartend in the basement at Bookie's. You know, my rent was only $50 a month because I had so many roommates. I started out living at the Golden Gate House, which was me and Melanie and Monique Roy and Melanie Nettle and I. We were the Golden Gate girls. And the Golden Gate House was like just a femme-led punk house. And then when I left there, I moved into the Seabourn House. Glad was in the basement. Oj had the attic. Odell was in one of the rooms. I took the sunroom. There were like usually anywhere from 10 to 12 of us living in that house. Has anyone told you about the Seabourn House yet?
I know Dave talked about the Glad House. If that's what you're talking about, is the Glad House?
I don't know if he's talking about the Seabourn House when they were in the basement, or if he's talking about the place they went to after the Seabourn House. I'm not sure.
He might not be talking about the Seabourn House.
Yeah. The Seabourn House was in Indian Village. You know how Indian Village, one half is really rich people and the other half is, you know, working class, low-income people? We were obviously in the low-income side. And Oj, who eventually became my husband and the father of my child, and then my ex-husband, and now my friend, he worked at the Van Dyke place, which was walking distance from there. And he hired Dave to be in his kitchen. He was executive chef, which was really like, Oj was like the only person with a legit job. Like executive chef, but you're a punk. It was so weird that he was like, it was weird because we would have, like at the Seabourn House, we would have Thanksgiving dinner with these ingredients that were like rich people ingredients. We had caviar and sun-dried tomatoes and balsamic reduction. This is in the 80s when all this stuff was like new. And like, you know, really great ingredients that Oj would order from the Van Dyke Place restaurant. So that was really interesting. I was a vegetarian, and Dorje, who sometimes lived there, was also a vegetarian. But everyone else was like really happy with the stuff that Oj would bring home from the Van Dyke Place.
Dorje, yeah. You know what? I think him and my mom dated for a period of time.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. One of my greatest memories with Dorje was talking to him about getting emancipated because his mother was not well. And then one day back then, a box of macaroni and cheese was like 25 cents. But then you also are supposed to mix it with butter and milk, right? We were like, we didn't have money for butter and milk. Mm-hmm. So we were eating macaroni and cheese that we made with water. And this shit was good. We didn't care. We were like, we shared a box of macaroni and cheese that we made with water, and that's what we ate for the day. Our budget was like 25 cents a day for food. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I loved RJ. We had some fun adventures. But yeah, so at 14, I started leaving my house. I would go back to my parents' home on and off because my brother was there, and I was kind of like, I had helped raise him, but by the time he got 12, when I was 16, he wasn't letting me guide him anymore. And so I was like, okay, if you're not gonna, like, you're the only reason I'm here. So I was officially all the way out by the time I was 16. But from 14, I would be gone for like months at a time. And I would just come back to check on my brother and then leave again. And 16, I was done. I never moved back home after that. And I was fully in, by 16, I was fully in the Detroit punk scene. Before I moved in with Melanie and Monique at the Golden Gate House, I lived on, I think it was Second and Prentice in the Cass Corridor. You'll hear about the Cass Corridor a lot, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so my first place was in the Cass Corridor, and I used to do poetry through the Wayne State English department, and I would do poetry with John Sinclair at Alvin's, I think it was called.
Wow.
Yeah, Alvin's. And John Sinclair kind of became like a surrogate dad to me, sort of like my poetry dad. He looked out for me. He would look out for me. And he knew that I was a beatnik and that I loved beatnik poetry. I was almost very often wearing a turtleneck with a suit coat and like tight black pants and pointy black shoes. I had two looks. I'm definitely non-binary, where either I'm very femme, it might be goth, it might be sparkle fairy, but it's very femme, or I'm dressed like a man or a boy. There's really no in between. Like,
I guess you could say the same with some of my looks, too.
That's why I responded to you. Honestly, I saw you and I was like, oh, we're related. That's, yes, absolutely. You're just like that. Like, and some of your goth femme looks are like a page straight out of how I used to dress. And I know it's how your mom dressed. But like, you know, sometimes I looked like Tank Girl, and sometimes I looked a little more Susie. And I started looking like that before I knew bands looked like that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We were doing that in our scene before icons were doing it, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
But, and I had these phases where, like, at one point, I went through a phase where I was like punk rock Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farms, because I found like this prairie skirt in the dumpster behind Penny Pincher. Write that down. Penny Pincher was our main thrift store resale shop. It was downriver, and they would put things in the dumpster specifically that they knew we wanted, so that we could find them. Like a red velvet bustier that I had, and a full-length silk with a fur collar that stood up cape that had floor-length fringe.
Wow.
For me. Yeah, hello. They would put that stuff, they would fold it nice and put it on top of the dumpster, and I was like, oh, it's for me. It was like, yeah, they were great. We actually did a fashion show, theatrical presentation fashion show for them. And the owner, one of the two owners, they were a couple, he said, you have more talent in your pinky than any artist I know has in their whole body. And I was like, what? Oh, I'm an artist? Like, he was the first one who made me realize that what I was doing was art. Like, I hadn't thought about labeling it. I was just doing stuff. And he was like, honey, you're an artist. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, I'm just a director, though. And he's like, okay, first of all, directing's art. And second, you're writing this, and you're conceiving of it, and you're coming up with, with sets, and you're making music. This is art. And I just didn't realize it. I was a teenage girl. I had no, I was a kid. I didn't know. Just a tomboy. And, yeah. Anyway, so I don't know where I was when I started talking about our different, like, what we have in common, you and I. But
you were talking about John Sinclair.
Oh, yes. So, John Sinclair, I did an open mic where I was very passionate. I was very angry and passionate. And I did some poetry. And John came up to me and he's like, that was really good. Keep going. And I was like, okay, I didn't know who he was. I was just some kid. I had no idea that he was the great John Sinclair. And then he kind of watched over me on that scene. And when Ginsberg and Ann Walden, when other beatniks came into town, he made sure that I met them and that I got to read on the same stage with them, which is huge. Like, that was just such a gift. That was dream come true making, And then, so I did poetry. I dabbled in music, but I mostly did avant-garde theater. And it was very important to me that I not monetize it. My belief back then, and this is something that I hope your generation is different about to a certain degree, because we were all very anti making money off of our art and our music, our punk scene. My belief back then was that if I start accepting money from an audience or from a venue or from an art gallery or whoever, a grant organization, then that's going to influence the art that I make. And I want the art to come through. It's going to come through me. I want to perform it once and never again. Even if it takes 3 to 6 months to put the piece together, even if there's 40 people involved, even if I have these 6-foot pleather stage elements that move across the stage, even if I have aerialists, I had to figure out how to do aerial, to direct people to do aerial, even if it was super complicated, or if it was as simple as one person performing with a recorded sound, a live musician, and one voice. Even if it was that simple or super complicated, I didn't want to do it more than once. I wanted to be true performance art, which means it comes through, you witness it or you don't, it's never done again. And by not expecting any money from it, I was able to do that. Now, eventually, that's a great way to think when you have 10 or 12 roommates and your rent is $50 a month. But then, as you get older, and for me, when I became a mom, I needed to make a living. And that's when I started changing how I was doing things. And I got grants, and I started transitioning into film. But from age 16 until from age 16 until 26, when I performed at 29. When I was 29, I performed at the CAC, and they gave me a grant. Or I got to do a grant. I got to do a performance at the CAC because I had earned a grant. So I was 29 the first time I accepted funding for my work. And right after that, I moved to California and started in the film industry. But so from 16 to 29, I think that's a pretty good run of like keeping my art as pure as I could. But honestly, I don't think it, I realized that my art was starting to suffer for lack of funds. And I realized that it had become almost like an addiction where I was like, do I pay rent or do I pay for this set? I mean, that's cuckoo, right?
Yeah.
And thankfully, it never got to the point where I didn't pay rent, but the fact that I even thought it, I had a realization that, okay, something needs to shift. Because I have these, my ideas were getting bigger and bigger and more multifaceted and more multimedia. And then I made the switch. Now, the whole time I started out listening to David Bowie, and old Genesis with Peter Gabriel, not to be confused with what people think Genesis is now, and Billie Holiday, and I was really into jazz and funk and rock, but I loved the Dead Kennedys, I loved Black Flag, I loved Susie and the Banshees and Bauhaus and the Virgin Prunes.
Oh,
and
yes.
Yes, and Skinny Puppy,
Yes.
and Nick Cave, and
Yes.
Nick Cave was life-changing. And the Cult, and the Damned,
Oh, yes.
and the Stranglers. Oh my God, the Stranglers! I had a great collection of the Stranglers.
You're speaking my language here.
Yes, I'm telling you. When I saw you, I was like, I like this kid. I just have to talk to this kid. And I'm so impressed with you. Yes, we have a lot in common. When I discovered the Stranglers, I was like, what? Why doesn't anyone else know about them? It's like, because they were in England. You know, they were in London. They weren't very big in the United States, but they started to catch on in Detroit because I would ask Charles English. You've heard about Charles English.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So Charles loved me. And I was a dancer. Going further back, I started dancing when I was about 3. The first time I went on stage, I was 6. My father was against me dancing anything except for Greek folk dancing. So I had to sneak my classes. When I was a little girl, I would sneak my classes at the I think it was called the Royal Oak Dance Academy or something. And I would ride my bike there with my little brother. I would take a class, and then what I learned in the class, I would teach the Tiny Tots class. And that's how I paid for my dance classes when I was a kid. So I couldn't get in trouble with my dad, like my family didn't know. And so I was always a dancer at heart, and I'm a dancer spirit, right? But like when I would go up to Charles in the booth and I would tell him what I wanted to dance to, and he would play the song, and people would clear an area of the dance floor to watch me dance. And I just loved that. Like, I remember one time at the asylum, Blixa was there, and he was like, how is she doing that? And Jillian was like, training. That's training, because I like to spin. I like to do pirouettes, and I would just turn and turn and turn with a cape. It was just very dramatic. You would have loved it. We would have hung out for sure.
Definitely.
We would have been great friends, probably housemates, for sure.
I probably would have loved to have helped you with performance art.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes, for sure. You would have helped with the scores. You would have the soundtracks. I would have put you on stage. Yeah, for sure, we would have worked together. Absolutely, because I can tell just by your aesthetic, and the fact that you are not one. You know, you're not stuck in one box.
Oh no.
Yeah. Don't you love life like that?
Yeah.
I think our neurology is the healthy neurology.
I would agree.
Right? Because we're not boring.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I would put on these shows, and it was just really fun. My record collection, I remember when I lived at the Golden Gate House, when that came to a head, the people who lived downstairs from us, so you can imagine, it's a punk house. And Eva Scrivo and Jeanette Bennett came over, like they were both beauty school dropouts, although Eva eventually graduated, but they were hanging out outside the door, and we, let them in when we woke up in the afternoon, and we would all get ready. Eva and Jeanette lived with us for a little while there, so there were 5 punk women, and then Benson would come over with some of his friends, and then eventually people would come, like, we were right down the street from Bookie's. It was like 7 in Woodward, and Bookie's was on McNichols, 6.5 in Woodward. And my dad's collision shop was at 6 in Woodward, so I had to be or 6.5 in Woodward. So I had to be very sly about all of that. I changed my name, by the way, on the punk scene from Thomai Hatsios to Thomai Hara, because I didn't want to shame my family with my perception of beauty and my idea of what looked good and fun and cool. I knew that they would not be happy about it, that they would not feel good about it, and that people in the Greek community would say stuff. So I hid from the Greek community for about 5 or 6 years to not shame my family with my unusually colored hair, my big hair, my bald head, all the different things that I did. And then I got in the Metro Times. And I was like, oh, well. And then we were in the Detroit Monthly magazine. I was like, oh, well. I showed up to a photo shoot to be the art director, and the model didn't come. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. And then I was in a photo shoot with Benson for Detroit Monthly.
I saw a picture of you with Benson on your page.
Yes, yes. So Ben and I have lived together on and off, oh gosh, going back to the 80s. He followed me down to New Orleans. So in 1991, so all this time I had really severe asthma that was debilitating, which is something I had in common with one of my favorite beatniks, Jack Kerouac. I'm very high energy, as you can tell, and go, and doing a bunch of different things at the same time.
So am I.
Yeah. Or I couldn't breathe, and then I couldn't move because I couldn't breathe, and all of my focus was on getting through that day. But it also, so while asthma was very difficult and traumatic and tried to kill me over and over again, it also gifted me. It was a great gift that I'm grateful for, because if it wasn't, because I'm punk, I'm not a hippie, but because of asthma, I learned all this hippie stuff. So, I'm a Reiki master, I'm an herbalist, I taught yoga and meditative movement for 22 years, I was a vegetarian and a vegan and macrobiotic, and I tried everything for at least 6 months to see if it would help me overcome or cure asthma. For a while, I thought that maybe I could mind over matter asthma, so I did transcendental meditation. I ended up in a coma in the hospital because I went too far out during an asthma attack. I kind of was in such a deep meditation that I didn't know I was turning blue, and I ended up in a coma. And then another time, I was remodeling a house that I had started saving for a house when I was 12. And when I was 24, I was already a mom. I was still married to Oj, but I wanted to buy a house in my name with my money. And So I sold a bunch of my collectibles. Well, so I was never into Tears for Fears, but I knew they were popular. So I was working at a record store, Harmony House. So anytime promotional stuff came in, I got to have it, and I traded it or sold it at record conventions. And I was able to sell a lot of my record collection and take all of my savings from age 12 and put them into a down payment for a house in Ferndale on 8 and Woodward. And it was a time when homes there were really inexpensive, like $36,000 bought you a 2-bedroom house with, I had a 9,000 square foot lot, which is really big.
Wow. It's
like the size of a football field, yeah. And it had a porch and a back patio and a 2-car garage. It was incredible. And I bought that primarily with albums, selling albums. But I had already started divorce proceedings. My ex was living somewhere else. Oj, you might want to talk to him too. And I was remodeling my house, and I'm allergic to mold and dust, and it almost killed me. I was pronounced dead. I was in a coma for 12 days. I was pronounced dead. During my near-death experience, during part of it, I had a really interesting near-death experience, which is a whole other story. But the part of it that pertains to you and to your book and the punk scene is that my spirit brother, Benson, was so afraid I was going to die, and Jillian was so afraid. Everyone was so afraid. Eva prayed. Eva's an atheist. She went to the church. There were a bunch of goth punks, goth punk atheists at the hospital, temple, church, whatever, chapel, there it is, at the hospital chapel praying for me. And then Benson had an idea to get everyone together at the city club and do a ritual for my breathing. And while I was in my near-death experience, I felt it. And I felt their presence. I felt a group breathing into my lungs. And when I woke up, I asked people about it, and they were like, Benson was like, yeah. There were a bunch of us in a circle breathing for you. And Garrick May DJ'd it. I was like, all right.
That's cool.
Yeah. During my near-death experience, part of it was that I felt called to New Orleans. And I moved to New Orleans in 1991. So in New Orleans, I got a little more professional about my performance art and started touring. I did a show that was like a vaudeville burlesque drag show. I had drag queens who could sing, taking songs by like Patsy Cline, a song by Patsy Cline that's we rearranged the lyrics to be empowered. Like we took a song by Billie Holiday, All of Me.
Oh,
you can't take, so we change it from take all of me to you can't take all of me. Can't you see I'm too good without you? Can't take my arms, I like to use them. Can't take my charms, you'd only abuse them. So I rewrote the lyrics to Torch songs so they were empowered, and drag queens performed them, and we toured. And we had aerialists, we did all kinds of crazy stuff. This was in the early 90s. But it was all like incubating in the Detroit punk scene when my rent was $50 a month, and I lived with all punks. We were all freaks, you know. Frank Minority, Dave Martinico, and I, and Eva Scrivo and Odell, we were like the ethnic ones, right? Because Frank Minority is, I think, Albanian, and he used to have to sneak out of his house, and then he would put makeup on once he got in the car. Dave Martinico's from an Italian family, obviously, with that name. Eva Scrivo's dad was Italian, her mom was French. My parents were strict Greek parents. you know, we were all, it was different for us. You know, there was an extra added layer of, and Dorje, and, you know, my ex-husband was, his parents were from Germany. We weren't just freaks, we were like first generation children of immigrant freaks. So there was another added flavor to it, you know. But what I loved about our scene was that we were all freaks. We were all either kicked out of the house, or we ran away from home, or we just, almost everyone did not get along with their biological family. And I learned very young. By 14, I started creating chosen family. I like to identify my chosen family as spirit family, because I remember people saying, you know, quoting religious scriptures where they would say, blood is thicker than water. First of all, that's a very small portion of that quote. And second of all, it inspired me to say, well, spirit transcends all. So spirit family is stronger than blood family. And I believe that. Definitely. I believe that, yeah, I believe that spirit family is as strong as blood family, and in a different way.
Well, Thomai, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
And one thing that I really want to highlight in this book, and I feel like, which you just gave me another idea, because you mentioned about Dave Martinico, Eva, and about Frank Minority, about you know, the added layer of being from immigrant families. But I think what also is another thing that I'd like to touch on is because there were a lot of women in the scene.
Yes.
And I think that it's very important, because the two books that have talked anything about punk, it's been from mostly a man's perspective, you know, like you get
very male centric.
Very male centric.
Very male centric.
And I want to show that punk, goth, new wave, it wasn't just a male thing. It was female, and that there's female, male people that were
absolutely
didn't have those, you know, maybe didn't consider themselves male or female, you know.
Yeah.
And I want to highlight that.
Speak to that.
And I'd love for you to speak about that, for sure.
Yes, I would love to speak to that. So, you know, in society, women and girls make up 51% of the population. People born and identified female at birth make up 51% of the population. In addition to that, there are trans women and non-binary. So I think it's interesting that so much of recorded history is so male-centric, right?
Yes.
Unless you go back to cave paintings, and then you're like, oh, there was a matriarchy. And I became, when I moved to California, I realized that I was stepping onto sets, and productions were almost all men, and predominantly white Anglo-Saxon men, and predominantly heterosexual white Anglo-Saxon men. So, cisgendered. And I decided within by the time I did a second job, I realized that I needed to start my own company to foster more opportunities for a diverse group of people, for women and the children of immigrants and people of different skin tones. I wanted to have a diverse set, and I did that. And for over 25 years, I've been able to accomplish that with my production company. That is my legacy, is that I've mentored many people in the film industry, and you know, we've done a lot of productions, and they're always diverse. Now, in the punk scene, what was really striking to me, and the reason the owners of the Penny Pincher said to me, "You're an artist, you have more talent in your pinky," was because an article had been written about a performance art piece that I co-wrote, I fully directed, I fully choreographed, I co-created the soundtrack, and I designed the set and even built it with people. That is a directing credit, that is a writing credit, that is a producing credit. And I was listed as the muse in the article.
Wow.
The muse. And I was so upset by that. And I felt bad for being upset by that, because I was like 18 years old. And everyone was older than me. And that was when the guys from Penny Pincher were like, "Oh no, you're the artist who created it," because we did a show for them. And I wasn't even mentioned in the article about it. I was often named a model or a muse when I was writing, directing, and producing, and choreographing, and making music. That was offensive. And it's just because the people who were writing the articles were men, and it didn't occur to them. The people who were being interviewed were men, and it didn't occur to them. They never reached out to me. People like Marla is a staple in the scene. Marla held that scene up, especially Todd's. People went to Todd's because Marla was there. And people will just call her a bartender or the girlfriend of one of the band members. No! That band would not have lived without her. They wouldn't have survived.
Yes.
I don't know. I have a feeling she's very humble. I don't know. I haven't talked to her in years. I love her. We just haven't seen each other in years. But I don't know if she told you how much she did. She was not just the girlfriend. Or, yes, she was a bartender, but she wasn't just a bartender. She was the heartbeat of Todd's.
And I've always gotten that feeling, ever since I've gotten to start talking to her, and as I learned about her, it was like, she had more to do, I feel like, than most other people,
Yes.
and I got that feeling. I'm like, and she seemed like she was humble about it, I mean,
Yeah.
but I definitely, and she's such a sweetheart, she's such a great personality,
Yeah.
and she was so sweet, but I think the other thing that she deserves credit for is she has so many stories, and it's like,
Yes.
it's like that's what we need, is we need the storytellers, and I feel like that's something that she deserves recognition for, because she has a lot of stories,
Yes. Yes.
She could tell somebody that wants to know about our scene things that maybe they don't get to know,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that was so when I worked at the record store, Monique and Melanie and I, we were in the scene. Melanie was a mod, 100% mod. She wore the coat. She drove a Carmen Ghia. She had a Vespa. Her record collection was The Who and Elvis Costello and
The Jam?
all the two-tone bands, The Jam. Oh, I love The Jam.
Me too.
That's Entertainment is on every mix I have. That song just hit me. We were all into The Clash. We were all into a lot of the same music, but each one of us had a specialty, right? And Monique was really into Big Country and U2, and so we all loved Big Country and U2. And our house was, at one point, we had over 9,000 albums.
Wow.
Between the three of us. Okay? When I tell you I bought a house and used money from albums that I had doubles of, I was a real record collector, and I was very often, when I was a girl, I was definitely the only girl, and as I grew older, I was the only, woman or non-binary or androgynous person at the record conventions. It was very rare that I would see anyone else that was the slightest bit femme. A couple DJs from like Backstreet, which was one of the OG gay bars. But anyways, back to women in the scene. So what happened was we were labeled incorrectly. We were called the muse and the model, even though we wrote and directed and I wrote, directed, and choreographed, and was called a muse. Like, dude, really? What? I just spent 3 months building this project, and I'm being called the muse. Whose muse am I? My own? Like, what are you talking about? And, Benson made clothing to sell. He wanted to do fashion shows, and I was like, I think we should make them like real performance art pieces. And we would conceive together. When we brainstormed together, it was like electricity was flying around us. And then he would do his part, which was the costumes, and I would do my part, which was the show. And that's not how it was written about. So, that was really concerning. I remember, I have so many individual stories that I could share, but, have you heard about Timothy Michael Caldwell?
I've heard a little bit about Tim Caldwell, and I've seen pictures, and I've had people tell me to reach out to him.
Yeah, it would be good to reach out to him. Back then we didn't know what we know now. There's a good possibility he's on the spectrum. He was my first love. We were together for, I think, 2 years, maybe, I don't know, I think it was about 2 or 3 years. And he's a great artist, and he collected books, and he would find me cool stuff. So I had this really great book collection of, original signed Anais Nin prints, and just great books, and we made some art together as well. And again, I was not credited for anything I did with him. So I work in a collaborative medium. I'm a natural-born collaborator. I'm a filmmaker, and everything we do is collaborative. Everyone has their own job, their own title, but we all collaborate. It's a collaborative medium. You cannot do it without a team. And when I collaborated in the scene in Detroit, I wasn't given credit for my contribution. And I looked around and I realized none of the women were. It was really, it was biased against us.
That seems. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
It seems to go against it seems to be the antithesis of what punk or post-punk is supposed to be. It seemed like it.
Yes.
It is. It seems like.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. I don't think they notice it. You know what I mean? It wasn't intentional, for sure, not intentional. But when you're raised in a patriarchal society, keep in mind that I was 10 years old when my mother was allowed to have a credit card or a bank account without a man's co-signing it. Wow. 10. So I also have compassion for, and I've talked to people since then. I've talked to at least one person since then about how they were given all the credit for the work that we did, and it was just like Tim knew, and the people from Penny Pincher knew, and Dave Martinico knew. The people who were there watching me do the work knew my contribution, but no one else did. And that I'm like, there's whole articles written about the project that I directed and choreographed and helped produce, and I'm mentioned as a model or a muse. That's really not okay. So I only confronted like one person about it, and that person immediately realized, oh my God, that's terrible. I didn't even think of it. I didn't even notice. And since then, that person is now very particular about giving everyone their due credit and realizing when it's a collaboration and when it's not, and appreciating and giving titles before the work is finished, and then upgrading the titles as needed after the work is finished. So I'm grateful that there has been some shift. My belief is that I was put on this earth partly to shift the paradigm. I know that my father, before he passed away, thanked me for, he said that, you know, having you as my daughter helped me grow and learn and be a better person. And I was like, wow, that's huge. I was like, that's all your work. All I did was make suggestions and set examples. You did all the work. And he was like, no, I wouldn't have done it without you. He would have just been a sexist, racist bigot had it not, you know, homophobic bigot had he not been exposed to what I exposed him to. So I feel like I have some compassion for the misogyny, and not the misogyny, for the bias against women in the industry, in the scene back then, because of how we were all raised. You know, our mothers weren't allowed, they couldn't get a divorce without a judge's permission. Like, the judge had to decide. There was no-fault divorce didn't start till the late 70s. So, you know, women had to ask permission and get permission from their husbands to work outside of the home. Work inside the home wasn't considered work. That unpaid labor that is basically, back then, was indentured servitude, wasn't considered enslavement. So we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go.
Yes.
And I'm very grateful for your generation, because you are our dream. You, for people like me, know what I dreamed was possible. Someone to know that they're not one thing or another, that they can be non-binary or gender expansive, that your generation has names for things that we were just like stumbling through. You know, we didn't know what was going on. You now have the names for it. The emotional intelligence of your generation is a dream come true for many people from the X-Gen. Your emotional intelligence, we are learning from you. And it's a huge gift.
Wow.
At the same time, I have to have compassion for the people before me who had no emotional intelligence and had no concept of, you know, what it means to, like, if you asked any punk on the scene, do you believe in equality? They'd say yes. And then if you, like, start to take apart some of their behaviors, some of the things they're involved in, they'd be like, oh my God, what? They wouldn't know. It wouldn't occur to them.
Oh, sure.
Like, you know, wait, so when you promoted that show and I made the flyer, like whenever Timothy Michael Caldwell did a flyer, it always said TMC on the bottom. Or TM Caldwell. Or Tim Caldwell. Always. People were really proud to have Tim make a flyer for them. But when a woman made a flyer, there was no credit given. There was no name on the bottom of the flyer. And I was the first one to notice that and point it out. And I remember, like, Tim put together a couple bands that Dave Landrum was in.
Oh, Dave. Yeah, I interviewed Dave.
I'm so impressed that he's okay.
Yeah, he's hanging in there. You know, he went through. He had He had kind of the same thing like my mom had, squamous cell carcinoma, I think.
Oof.
And he went through the I don't know if it was gene therapy or not, but he got through it.
That's another aspect of women in the scene that is not, it's not spoken of, it's not really regarded highly enough, and that is how many of the guys we kept alive. Dave Landrum was brought to me multiple times, unconscious, and me and my housemates I remember getting honey and putting teaspoons of honey under his tongue just to keep him alive.
Wow.
I don't know what drugs he had been on the night before, whatever he had been doing, but he was like basically unconscious. And, you know, we helped keep him alive. That didn't just happen with Dave. It happened with a lot of different musicians. I remember, so Tim put together Manhole, what was the cowboy band, cowpunk band? Country Bob and the Blood Farmers?
Yes. Texas band.
Yeah, Tex is a trip.
Oh, yeah.
Tex is a whole trip. What other band did he do? Manhole, and he also did, what was the band that Dave was in?
Coven. There was Coven. Dance Macabre.
And Dance Macabre. Yeah, so both of those bands, Tim put those together. Tim was like kind of like a Malcolm McLaren type.
Oh.
He instigated, he totally put together Country Bob and the Blood Farmers. I was there. I was living at his place when he was writing the songs. He was writing the lyrics. And then he approached Tex and was like, hey, we're going to do this. And Tex was like, okay, I'll be Country Bob. It was cuckoo, but it's a great album. I wish I still had it. I got rid of all my albums, but yeah. Anyway, so even with that, like, I remember being involved in, I became obsessed with serial killers. And, you know, just showing Tim what I was finding about serial killers led to the song about Ed Gein. And that it was, I got a bowl full of noses at my house, and inside it's as quiet as a mouse. That was Country Bob and the Blood Farmers song. Yeah. But, like, there were characters, you know, women in the scene that were such strong characters, you know. Like, I mean, I love Charles English. I loved his DJing, and, you know, he wouldn't have gotten to the club without Mercedes.
Oh, yeah.
And his, you know, what would his DJing be without the dancers that people would spread? I remember, like, there were certain songs. I got the first Tones on Tail. I had Tones on Tail color albums. Did you ever see those?
No, I haven't seen those.
Go was green. They were like color discs.
I've seen the albums. I've seen like the album covers, but I've never.
No. Yeah, these were colored discs. The first edition, there was red, green, and blue. And, you know, I was a collector, so I had all of those, Tones on Tail. And I just remember going to the club, and there were certain songs that were like Thomai songs. That Charles would put them on, and people would spread out so that they could see me dance to it on the dance floor. And I freaking loved that. It was such a great feeling. And then there were times when Benson and I would dance together, and it looked like we had choreographed it. We would do double stunts, because I weighed probably 110 pounds at most. I'm only 5'4", and he's like 6'4". And so he would like toss me around, and people were just like, oh my God, they thought it was choreographed. It wasn't. We were just in tune with each other. We met, again, when I was 16 and he was 18. I met Jillian Kreiner I was 16. I went through a phase where I was obsessed with red shoes, like Dorothy. Probably because I was leaving home. And when I met Jillian, she was wearing this pink foofy thrift store dress. She looked like Glinda the Good Witch. And we right away became Dorothy and Glinda. And we used to go, she costumed, she did like t-shirts for Einstürzende Neubauten and Nick Cave. I think it was still Birthday Party, or was it Bad Seeds? I don't remember which came first.
Birthday Party, I think.
Right. So she was doing t-shirts for them, and she was this great designer. She made these long coats, these like trench coats, duster coats, but she would take black velvet paintings and put them on the back. It was so freaking cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I modeled for her, and I remember when I was modeling for her, I choreographed a show at the Fox, and one of the other models, this guy was like he was really flexible, and I was like, have you taken gymnastics at all? He's like, yeah, when I was a little kid. My mom was like, you're too crazy for the house, so she would just drop me off.
Back.
Okay, hang on 1 second, I'm texting hang on 1 second. Before I left town, but ran out of time. Ran out of time. Alright, sorry. Is she okay?
Yeah, she's okay.
Okay, good. Please tell her I wish her all the healing energy. I wish her great support, perfect health, and grace with ease, always.
I sure will.
So, yeah, I choreographed, this one guy was he had gymnastics in his background, and so I choreographed a show at the Fox Theater for Jillian where we were modeling those duster coats, and I was like, wouldn't it be funny if we pretended to fall down the stairs? The whole audience would be like, oh, and so we did that. And it was a choreographed fall, but everybody thought we were dying. It was great fun. I also modeled for Jillian, and I wore a wig and got to the end of the stage. I was in a mini skirt, like a leather mini skirt and a leather bustier that was taped onto my body, and a long black wig. I got to the end of the stage and pulled my wig off, and I was bald, and the whole audience went, oh, that was really fun too. But, yeah, so you should talk to Jillian. She's fun. And she's super energetic too. But yeah, so I think, like, a lot of the fashion that we appreciate about our scene was led by women, and nobody gave credit for that. The bands that were led by women very often didn't get the headline. So I think it was just the way it was back then. It wasn't, I don't think it was intentional. I don't think there was a single misogynist in my friend group, but men and women were biased against women and girls. Yeah. And like I said, things are shifting. Your generation are doing so much better than any other to date. Of course, there's some that are slipping backwards, but that pendulum swing is to be expected. It'll go back to, we'll keep shifting more progressive and more conscious and more emotionally intelligent as we go. I believe that. I have to believe that.
I believe with you too.
Yeah. Like, what people don't know is like the bathrooms, the women, not every club had bathrooms for women. They were very often unisex, but when there were bathrooms with just women in it, it was like therapy in there. It was like women helping each other out, women dealing with like really deep issues in the bathroom. It was like a safe space. And women sharing eyeliner and sharing mascara and sharing frickin' Aquanet hairspray, which I later found out is lacquer. We're spraying our heads with lacquer. Yeah, and like the Golden Gate House, it was 3 women. All 3 of us worked at a record store. All 3 of us collected albums. And then other women came and stayed with us. And Benson would sometimes stay with us. And then Cindy Cadaver lived with us for a minute.
Oh, Cindy, yeah, Arcala.
Yeah, so, Arcala and I think I was about 17 when I met Arcala. She moved into the Golden Gate House. Kurt, my ex-husband's brother, Kurt Dalkin, he moved in, and he was dating Cindy, or Arcala. So we named her Cindy Cadaver at the Golden Gate House because she would go into catatonic states. And my childhood best friend, Marlene, may she rest in peace, saw Cindy, was like, she's like a cadaver. And then she became Cindy Cadaver. And from that, she went to Arcala. I don't know if she goes by Arcala Cadaver now. I'm not sure.
She just goes by Arcala. I would call her Arcala.
Okay, well, she was Cindy Cadaver, and then she became Arcala Cadaver, and now she's just Arcala. But she lived there for a while. That was a femme household. That was a femme, even though I'm non-binary, I was called androgynous back then. Melanie was called androgynous. She had super short, she looked like a mod boy. She looked like a little boy. She had a short mud haircut. She always wore the parka with a bullseye. She was totally like straight out of that Who movie. But it was a femme house. And Eva lived there for a minute. Jeanette lived there for a minute. It was really fun. Like, we did crazy stuff. We would do like, someone brought a Ouija board one time, and someone else brought tarot cards, and we did a lot of witchy-poo type stuff. It was mostly in fun, but it was also enough for us to be titillated by it. We were really excited by the whole process. It was fun. And then that's when I realized that reading cards, reading the coffee cup like Greeks do, coffee grounds, reading bones, I realized that all of that was just a way to access your subconscious mind. And that you can do that with any medium, but it's good to access your subconscious mind. And I realized that if you share a mantra or a prayer or a spell while you're lighting a candle, every time you walk by that candle, your subconscious mind is reminded of that spell or prayer or mantra, right? So I learned a lot from that group, watching people get really excited about things like tarot and Ouija. I would observe more than anything. I was also straight edge, and everybody else was drinking and smoking, but I was straight edge for a lot of years. And so I did a lot of observing. I got to see some wild stuff. My ex-husband, Oj, at one point was the doorman for St. Andrews and for City Club and for the Asylum. I don't know if he was ever a door person for Todd's or not, but I remember asking him once, like, of everyone here, who would you be afraid to fight? And he was like, Jeanette Bennett. Jeanette's 5'2". And at the time, she was like a 19-year-old girl. 17, 18, 19-year-old girl. And I was like, Jeanette? And he's like, yeah, she's like a Tasmanian devil. Like, if she's If she comes after you, you better run. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're 300 pounds, 6'5", you better run. I was like, okay, good to know. Yeah. There's so many stories that I want to share with you. I can't think of all of them right now, but I feel like I'm just giving you the general brush strokes of the industry from my perspective, you know?
Well, I think what's really interesting is you were working at Harmony House and you were an imports buyer. You get these imported records. I think that's really unique. Did you ever run into a lady that used to DJ named Diana?
I think so. Where did she DJ?
I think it was at St. Andrews and the Shelter.
The Shelter, yes. Yes. Wow. All these memories are flooding back. Yeah, I feel like, so I got in trouble a lot for ordering stuff that the manager, one of the Harmony, I worked at 2 different Harmony houses. I worked at the Royal Oak Harmony House and I worked at the Oakland Mall Harmony House. And the Oakland Mall Harmony House, they tried to make it like a family establishment. So they didn't like the way I looked, they didn't like the way I dressed, my hair, whatever. And they would get upset at my imports buying, but it didn't stop me. I kept ordering imports because I was also selling them. Like this motor coil, I sold this motor coil to somebody who came in for classical music. I sold Japan to someone who came in for for jazz, because he was into the bass. And I was like, ooh, have you heard Japan yet? Nick Karn is amazing. He plays fretless bass. He was like, really? I was like, yeah, let me play a song. And I would play it, and the manager would give me the stink eye, but then it would sell. And I was like, dude, I'm selling albums. Leave me alone, you know? And this was back in the day before... This was when DJs would come to the record store, too. So DJs were allowed to play whatever they wanted. And they could make or break someone's career. Like, they could, if they liked a song, they would play it and introduce people to it. The Electrifying Mojo really helped Prince's career. Prince even thanked him. The Midnight Funk Association sparked interest in Prince and his music when he first started out, because no one knew how to classify Prince. They didn't know what to make of him. I loved him. But no one knew. Was he man, woman, punk, funk, rock? What is he? No one knew how to categorize him. He was hated by most radio DJs, except for the Electrifying Mojo. And he got played on that radio station and at that segment, which was like the midnight segment, and that sparked the whole movement. DJs got to come in and be like, what do you have? When I was 45's buyer, one of the 45s that was out, there was a Patti LaBelle song that was doing really well. I remember Anita Baker was doing really well with her album and her cassettes, and then the 45 that was Freddie Mercury and David Bowie singing Under Pressure came out. And I collected Bowie and I loved Queen, so I pushed that 45. And Billboard would call me every Sunday and ask me, what was your biggest selling 45 this week for R&B, for rock and roll, for pop? And I got to be the one to say, oh, David Bowie and Freddie Mercury, Under Pressure is my #1 selling 45 in all categories. And they were like, wow, are you pushing? I'm like, of course I am. I love David Bowie. Music was more organic back then. The music industry was really a lot more organic. Yes, there was some payola, like record promoters and managers would go in and pay off a DJ to play a song. But I remember the day that a woman DJ, I don't remember her name, sorry to say, but she worked, she was a DJ at WDET, Rock and Roll. Is that still a station in Detroit?
Yeah, I think so.
No, not WDET. That was WDET was the great public radio that John Sinclair had a segment on. No, this was a WRIF. WRIF, the rock and roll Detroit, rock and roll. Anyway, so WRIF, she was a DJ at WRIF, and she came in and she told me what was coming. She said a big corporation is taking over a bunch of radio stations, and they're forcing us to play the same songs every 4 hours, and they're giving us a playlist. We don't have any choice over songs anymore. A DJ is just a voice personality now. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, the whole industry is going to change. And it was also when CDs were coming out. They had only had, for a while, they only had classical music, and the thought was this crisp, clean recording of classical music was considered better than albums. But I was upset when the Sex Pistols' Nevermind the Bollocks came out on CD. I was like, what? I thought this was just for classical. This is going to kill the record industry. And between what the DJ informed me of, the corporatization of radio stations and how they would decide what songs people liked, because their theory was if you can play the same songs every 4 hours, within 3 days, people will think they like the songs. Because you've heard it over and over again. You get to know it, you get used to it, and then you like it. Dude.
Jeez.
And I remember thinking, no, that can't be. And that doesn't work with everyone. It doesn't work with a mind like yours or mine. But it works with a lot of mainstream people. And it worked. And that's what we have now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. God. Can you imagine? I just remember being so upset by that. And that's why after that show at, was it called The Shelter or The Asylum when Einstein's and Neubauten played there?
I think it might have been The Asylum that they.
Yeah, I think it was already The Asylum. Yeah, that's why I remember, like, was his name Andrew? One of the musicians from Neubauten was, like, took off his rubber boots and, like, poured sweat out of his boots from playing.
Oh, geez.
It was so gross. And then, you know, we just ran around Detroit all night, and I went into work the next morning with Blixa and quit. Very dramatically. Like, I made an entrance, and I was like, made an announcement of why I was quitting. So, like, it's become corporatized. I don't want to have anything to do with it. But the import section, I had albums like, I had music by the Swans and the Virgin Prunes and Christian Death and obviously Bauhaus and collections like This Mortal Coil and why am I forgetting the one that starts with a C that's like Dead Can Dance and Portishead sounds like they were inspired by them. Oh my God, how am I blanking on this band? It was one of the songs that when it was like dun, 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 dun. You could never understand what they were saying. They were like, yeah. What the heck was their name? Oh my God, I'm blanking. But I would order these really great compilation albums like Better an Old Demon Than a New God and the Red, White, and Blues compilation and all these great imports. I was the first one to sell Ministry in the store, and I'm trying to think of what other band. The Stranglers. I had everything by the Stranglers at Harmony House Records. I would push it on anyone who would listen to me. Like, if anybody came in with the slightest, like, one pin on their jacket, and I'd be like, oh, have you seen this section of our record store yet? Have you ever heard of the Stranglers? How about the Smiths? How about Bronski Beat? Like, oh, you look like you'd be a fan of Japan. And I just, like, I pushed so many cool albums and so many cool bands and the Jam and all the ska stuff anytime I saw anybody come in that might be the slightest bit. If somebody was into The Who, I would take them and turn them onto the Jam and the whole mod movement and the two-tone movement, and it was great. We also, did anybody tell you about the Coronation Ballroom?
I've heard a little bit about the Coronation Ballroom. Is that the one that was in Canada?
Yes. Wednesday nights. Yes. So that's something too. So the clubs, in particular Todd's, were really our churches. When I was a little girl, I told my parents that I wanted to be a prophet, and they said, no, you can't do that. You're a girl, and we already have one. And I was like, well, then I want to be a priest. And they said, well, you can't do that because you're a girl. And I was like, okay, well, F you. But then I got to Todd's, and I was like, oh, this is a temple. Because we were going, I think it was Tuesday and Thursday was Todd's? Or was it Monday and Thursday?
Modern Dance Monday. Thank
you. Modern Dance Monday and Thursday was Todd's. Wednesday was Coronation Ballroom. Friday and Saturday were Asylum, The Shelter, City Club, and St. Andrews, depending on who had what show. And then eventually the Majestic. The Majestic came later. And then the only day that was open was Tuesday, and Tuesday was the day we would go to the Detroit Institute of Arts. And we'd go to, like, the art movies, because the DIA used to play art movies.
Really?
So we would watch, yes. I saw Angel at My Table there. I saw Truth is Stranger Than Fiction there. I saw Down by Law. I saw all these art films at the DIA. Oh, yes, it was lovely.
Wow.
And we would go, like, a bunch of punk rockers would just hang out at the museums, in the museum.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because actually one of my questions was I was going to ask you, because someone told me in an interview that punks were actually very attuned to art, and the reason I thought that was curious to me is because when I look at, like, the Sex Pistols, and you look at somebody like Sid Vicious, and you think about, like, that image, he seems so like somebody that, and that image is like, seems like very anti-art, you know, like very much like not somebody you would picture being into art. And that image, of course, his image became like a kind of a big thing for punk, you know, and it's just like you wouldn't you'd picture punks being into art. You know, maybe
that's the thing, is that the punk aesthetic is art.
Yeah.
You know, my son's band, Dead City Punks, just had a gallery show at Beyond the Streets. It was a whole installation showing the birth of the movement. And they set it up like a crime, you know how in crime movies the detective has that yarn that connects one thing to another?
Yeah.
They did that for the installation at Beyond the Streets. Punk, you know, the punk aesthetic is an art form.
Of course.
But beyond that, for what you're talking about, which is more fine art, the thing to remember is that, like, Cindy Weeks is someone you should talk to. Please write down Cindy Weeks and interview her.
Oh yeah, I've got her number. I'm gonna interview her soon.
Right. Tell her Thomai said hi.
I will.
Cindy was one of the first ones that taught me that I could do installation art. About really important things, like about things that had happened to me or had happened to people that I knew. She had gallery shows at the Michigan Art Gallery. It was on Michigan Avenue. It was called Michigan Art Gallery. It was right by Greystone.
Oh, yeah.
Which was like a bank vault. Yeah. I got a black eye at the Greystone, and it was like, I wasn't even, so I stage dived. There was a show with Big Black, Scratch Acid from Texas, and this little unknown band that opened for everyone called the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
And I remember I stage dived during the Scratch Acid set, and then I was sitting, and then afterwards I was sitting on the corner of the stage with my head in the speakers. I have punk rock ears. I have ear damage from that. Do not recommend. But I was sitting on the stage, on the edge of the stage, banging my head, listening to the music, and someone stage dived, and their boot, our Doc Martens back then had steel toes. Someone's boot hit my eye, and I got a black eye. And I remember all of the men that were my friends, Odell, Oj, Kurt, all these guys like lifted me up and handed me over the crowd one over another and placed me gently outside and ran and found ice for me from the liquor store, and they took such good care of me. It was really nice. But anyways, all that to say that the Michigan Art Gallery was very fine art, very high art. Cindy Weeks was, I think, the first real legit artist out of our scene that was getting like gallery shows and doing installations that really pushed the envelope. So talk to her about that. You know, what I was doing was performance art, but there were elements of it. Eventually, I was showing in modern art museums all over the country, and I would leave the installation, the set, what I would call the set, was an installation, and I would leave it up for 30 days and make it interactive. So it was an interactive installation art piece. Tim Caldwell made art. He drew, he painted, he used photography, collage. He did some really cool stuff that I think influenced bands like Marilyn Manson. So he did some really dark stuff. You should look at his stuff. I don't know if you heard about, what was the guy that used dead bodies in his art? I'm forgetting his name. Starts with a G. But there were definitely some fine artists. Tim Bees took a photo of me and my son. I think you've seen it, where I look like, you know, it's a mother and child photo where I'm nursing him.
Yeah, Tim Bees.
Yes, he did a whole series. His photographs are amazing.
Tim Bees, I think I'm going to use one of his photos for the book cover. He gave me permission.
I love it. I love the photo he took of me because, and I can show you the photo he took right before the art photo that went into the gallery. And it's just like a mom and her son and her husband, and we just look like regular people. And then you look at the photo that he took with the antique camera, and he said, "Widen your eyes." And I widened my eyes, and it became this art piece. It is art. That is not me. That is a Tim Bees art piece. So he's very special. And he had gallery shows. That's the other thing is there are people like Tony Drake. Again, you've got to interview Tony Drake. Tony's the one who came up with the term punkity rockety. Because he was like, are we really punk rock or are we punkity rockety? And what he meant by that was, we're not hardcore, we're not skinheads, we're not anti-racist skinheads, but we do listen to some hardcore music. And we do, you know, when we all hang out together, the thing too, and you can quote me on this in the Detroit scene was small enough that we all hung out together at the same bars. So people who were hardcore, new romantics, new wavers, mods, eventually grunge, we all hung out at the same club. Goth. We weren't called goth back then, by the way. We were called death rockers. Such a terrible. I really like goth better.
You know what's funny? You say that because my mom, every time she'll tell me, she's like, I never thought of myself as goth. I thought of myself as either punk or as death rock.
Yeah. So I really love the term goth. I'm very grateful to the millennials for coming up with that. But we were death rockers, and I really love that Tony called it punkity rockety, because when people are like my son's band is hardcore, and Zach LaRoche from Rage Against the Machine and the lead singer of the Addicts, they both have said out loud and written about Dead City as like real punk, like holy, not since Black Flag if we had a band like this, right? So yes, a lot of people, when I say I was in the punk scene in Detroit, they think it was all hardcore. And yeah, I loved Black Flag, and I loved the germs and dead Kennedys and etc. But I also loved Susie and the Banshees, probably more, because I danced to Christine so much. And I loved Kate Bush. So I love that Tony Drake coined the term punkity rockety. He's like, we're not mainstream. We're not normies. We're punkity rockety. When I met Tony, we were at the Coronation Ballroom. He was 16, I think I was 18. And I saw him, he looked like a praying mantis. By the way, Tony Drake is the finest, and I'm 60 years old now. And to date, Tony Drake is the finest gentleman I have ever known in my life. His hair was like, the troll dolls?
Yeah.
His hair was like a troll doll hair. He's like 6'2" or 4. I don't know. He's very tall and very thin, and he was dancing like a praying mantis to The Cure. And I don't know why, but I walked up to him and I was like, "Are you a bass player? You're a bass player." And then I walked away, and he was like, "What?" And I found out later that he had been going. He'd been going to what was that high school that Aaliyah went to? My dad wouldn't let me go. I got in. What was it called? Cass Tech.
Yeah, Cass Tech.
Right. So he was going to Cass Tech, and one of his teachers said, when you go to the when you go to the, what's the rich kid school? Cranbrook. When you get into Cranbrook or the other art school, there's two art colleges in Detroit. They were like, when you get to that school, you're going to have to decide if you're a musician or a visual artist, because he can do both. He can render anything, and he's also very funny, and he is great with puns, and he's very witty and clever. So you can either do that, or you can do music, and if you do music, you have to choose an instrument. He was like, I'm 16 years old, and totally overwhelmed by that. It's also not true, by the way. You can do all of it. You don't have to focus on one medium or one instrument. That's a lie. But when I met him, I was like, "Oh, you're a bass player," and I walked away. And he was like, that shifted everything for him. And he was making music. He still makes music. And he's a great artist. You should talk to him too. He coined the term punkity rockety, and I loved that because I can't say that I'm more into one band or another or one specific genre. I like so many of them. I like good music. I love Hank Williams Sr.
Oh, me too. Me too. Yes. I love him. Love his poetry and his lyrics. Those lyrics. Yes. I fell in love with his music. Johnny Cash, Jimmy Rogers.
Yes.
Jimmy Rogers, yeah. Oh, and I love the blues too.
Yes, Robert Johnson. Yep. When I heard Robert Johnson, my mind was blown.
Oh, that's what I was
obsessed.
My grandpa raised me on the blues, and his favorite was Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and just.
Okay, listen, honey. I own 2 houses in New Orleans. You are welcome anytime.
All right.
And you should go to the club called the Howlin' Wolf and the Maple Leaf, and go to Frenchman Street, because you will be very happy with the music.
Oh, I love it.
So, you're welcome. You have a place to stay anytime. You are welcome to come stay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think you'll love New Orleans. And it's also for you might want to go during Halloween. The Day of the Dead parade convenes at the St. Roch Cemetery, which is a block away. You can see it from my front porch. It's a huge parade. Anyways, so yeah, you're welcome to come. I'm in LA most of the time. I'm in California, but I do have property in New Orleans, my son and I, and as long as you give me enough notice, I'll let you know when there's availability. You're welcome to stay for free.
Oh, thank you. That warms my heart. I appreciate it. Well, you're welcome here. You're welcome to come here.
Well, I do hope to meet you in person when I come to Detroit.
Yeah, and you can see my mom.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen her in years. We were at Tracks. That's where that show was. Oh my gosh. So Psychic TV, who I loved, and I absolutely love Genesis. Genesis Peerage. And yeah, so your mom gave me advice in the bathroom. Like, I didn't have eyebrows, she didn't have eyebrows, and she was like, oh, we don't have eyebrows. And I was like, yeah, I shave mine every day. And she's like, oh, mine just don't grow. I was like, okay. And then we talked about, what eyeliner and how to keep it on and how much fun it is to have, like, an entire forehead to do eyeshadow with. And then when I went outside, I don't even know if she'll remember this, but Genesis, I was talking to Genesis after the show, before or after the show. It was outside, there's like a little door that led to the stage, and we were outside. And she was just like, just kind of be careful. I don't know if you're into it or not, but his wife they're French. They have an open relationship. Just beware. And I was like, what? I was not at all interested in that. That was something too. Please add this. Every band member that I ever got to hang out with and met, I never slept with any of them. I never intended to sleep with any of them. I never wanted to sleep with any of them. I never got the feeling that that's all they wanted from me. We were platonic and we were friends. But that's not what people assume. When I tell them, Nick Cave would come into town, and every single time he would get ripped off. He used heroin, and he would go into a very low-income neighborhood and try to buy something, and they would either take his money and give him nothing, or take his money and give him crap that wasn't even a drug. And so I was one of the people, I was really well trained by my stepfather in self-defense, and actually he called it attacking with ultimate force. Martial arts trained and etc. I call it Krav Mafia because he spent 20 years in prison, and when he came out, he taught me how to fight. And so I didn't have any fear. And so I would go with Nick when he wanted to score drugs. And Nick felt safer with me than alone. And I'm 5'4", I weighed 110. But somehow I was the safer bet out there. We hung out with Jim Thurwell. I was driving with Jillian. It was after my near-death experience. Jillian was moving to California. And so I drove with her across the country to California. We stopped in Kansas City, and Wise Blood was playing. And so we were like, oh my God, Jim's here. So we hung out with Wise Blood. We hung out with Jim Thurwell, who's also Scraping Fetus Off the Wheel. Are you into Scraping Fetus Off the Wheel?
I've heard of him, but I don't think I ever listened to him.
Okay, you're going to love him. He is a Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs genius. He was in Alphabet City back when Alphabet City was really dangerous in New York. And he wrote this whole piece, this whole project called Scraping Fetus Off the Wheel. Sick Man is the song to look for. Anyways, he was doing this project called Wise Blood. And we hung out with him all night. And he told us stories about how he was a school teacher in England and how he was a terrible school teacher. Like, what a bad school teacher he was. Like, we just hung out. There was never, but because we're women, people would throw all these projections onto us. And that's, again, more bias against women in the industry. That we couldn't just be friends with these musicians or just, have a regular conversation with them or talk about art and music with them. Someone's trying to messenger me. And then going back to the fine art of it all, we had fashion designers like Jillian. She eventually became a costume designer. I don't know, have you ever watched Dusk Till Dawn? The Robert Rodriguez film?
Did you say Dusk Till Dawn?
Yeah.
Is that the one that's like it's got that's not the one with vampires in it, is
yeah.
it? Yeah, that one that with Salma Hayek.
Yes.
Yep, I've seen that movie.
Yeah, so Jillian dressed Selma.
Wow.
So that was Jillian. So, you know, she was a fashion designer, and then she became a costume designer in the film industry, and commercials and whatever. Tim was a great artist. Cindy Weeks was a great artist. Arkayla made art. My art was always performance and film. I've produced 4 feature-length films. I've directed multiple commercials and music videos and short films, and I've directed over 50 episodes of true crime series shows. I've produced about 250 true crime shows. I've written 2 features, and I've written I don't know how many true crime shows. So it's not fine art, but it's film industry art. And before that, I did performance art. Who else is there? Oh, Niagara.
Oh yes, Niagara. I've been trying to sit down and interview her, but you know, I've sent her a few messages, but she's read them, but she hasn't responded back. And I've heard that she's a little shy. That's what I've heard. But
yeah.
But I really,
that doesn't surprise me.
I really do want to talk to her because I consider her a legend. And do you remember Sterling?
Of course.
And Sterling,
yes.
I interviewed Sterling, and she saw my interview, and she's like, man, I got to tell you, you are a good storyteller, man. I mean, she wrote me, and it was like, you know how they taught back in the '60s. She was like, yeah, man, you're a really good storyteller. And I was like, oh, that's a high compliment. You know,
that is.
And I'd love to interview her.
Yeah. What about Katie Haight? Have you talked to Katie Haight?
No, I haven't talked to Katie Haight.
So Jerry Vile is another one that, you know, he's a male promoter.
I've talked to him. Not really gotten an interview, but he called me on the phone because he wanted to make sure I was legitimate about doing this. It was kind of funny. Our conversation we had.
He's an interesting character. I did a couple shows. I did like this installation performance art piece for one of his shows back in like 1988. I think it was around, and I remember he came in and I was just being a character, and he was like, "You're an artist. You're a walking, living, breathing art." And I'm like, and I was stayed in character. He kept like trying to get me to break character and say, yes, I'm an artist. This is a performance, but I stayed in character. He's an interesting person. And Katie Haight, I almost killed her by mistake. Vincent and I were collaborating on a show, and I had this idea to paint Katie Haight with black spray paint, shiny spray paint, and then put white, have Tim Caldwell paint white stripes on her, like in a design, and then have her act like a chair and not move on stage until the very end and then get up and move. I found out the hard way that when you paint someone, if you're going to close all their pores, you need to leave like a stripe down their spine so that they don't suffocate to death. And the way we found that out was because Katie had to go to the hospital that night. Oops. I was like, oh my God, I almost killed a legend. The same night, Lorelai, I wish Lorelai was alive for you to interview Lorelai. Lorelai was the most tattooed black woman in America. She was also in that piece. And we had these huge moving sets in that performance art piece. It was really crazy. It was a fashion extravaganza for Benson, but it was performance art. It was multimedia. We just did some crazy shit. So Katie did all sorts of stuff. And I'm sure she has some crazy stories. Who else would be great? Yeah, so I think it's interesting, like, the punk movement has its own art, and then there are artists within the punk scene. Like, in the Detroit punk scene, the new wave and new romantics that came out of Cranbrook came to our clubs. And what's the school that I think Tim Bees went to Cranbrook? Like, they came to Todd's. And there were definitely posers who came on the weekend. Like, there were posers that would come, like, once in a while, like Thanksgiving weekend or whatever. But there were also artists that were very much in the scene. It was interesting because there were a lot of us that were, like, eating macaroni and cheese made with water, like me and Georgie. And then there were kids whose parents could afford Cranbrook. And, you know, they had nice cars and they wore store-bought clothes. You know, my clothes came from a dumpster. Most of them came from the dumpster behind Penny Pincher, or things that Tim gave me, or Jillian and Benson made clothes for me. They would dress me. I would go to their house and they would just throw clothes at me. Like, so it was an interesting, but one of the most lovely things about the Detroit scene was the diversity within it. I remember when I went to LA to see, I was with Jillian, we had just moved Jillian, and Jane's Addiction was playing. We went and saw Jane's Addiction. It was 1991, I think, around that time. And I realized that their clubs were all segregated. There was a hardcore club, there was a new wave club, there was a grunge club, there was all these different clubs. It wasn't all just one punk scene. It was all spread out. And we didn't have it like that in Detroit. We all hung out at the same places. And yes, when a hardcore punk band played, most of the audience was hardcore. But Mondays and Thursdays at Todd's, everyone was there. And the weird movies that they played in the basement, everyone was there. Oh. And City Club, everyone was there.
Oh, yeah, I've heard the stories about the movies in the basement.
Yeah, I couldn't stand, well, the movies that were at City Club, Tim put some of them together. It was a lot of subversive. Chris Gore and Tim would give Sterling, like, this really transgressive film stuff. Nick Zed, I forget the other filmmakers. Mostly gross filmmaking, but also, and then there was the Red Room. Kevin Monroe did the Red Room, and he would put, like, he had, like, 60s pop and burlesque from, like, the 50s and 60s, like, those kind of films in the background at the Red Room.
Yeah.
But City Club, I used to have to avert my eyes. I was too sensitive to look at, like, the stuff that Chris Gore was bringing.
Well, you want to hear something funny is before the City Club closed, because I went there for about a solid year I would go. And that was like last year, and well, it was nothing like how it was back in the day, but like they would have like these little like TVs around like the club, and they would play like these old like not hardcore, but it's like softcore, like porn from like the 70s and 60s. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah, transgressive movies. They were called like transgressive or something like that. Yeah, Nick Zed, shit like that.
So he's the one then that they came up with that idea then.
I think it was either Tim or Chris Gore or Sterling or all three of them. Oh, and also what's his name from bless his heart, he passed away. Itchy.
Itchy, yep.
Itchy from
Shock therapy.
Shock therapy.
Do you have any itchy stories? That's one thing I like to ask everybody is if they have any itchy stories.
Okay. So here's some stuff that about the men in the industry. I mean, not in the industry, in the scene. Men in the scene. Like, people ask me, oh my God, you went to a punk club when you were 14? I was like, yeah. And weren't you scared? Oh my God, what happened to you? Guess what? No one harmed me. No one tried to harm me until I came to California in the film industry and I was 29 years old, or 30. No one tried to harm me. Now, well, no, I take that back. The skinheads were after me for a while because I was dating, I had a black boyfriend. And they also didn't like when I shaved my head because I wasn't a skinhead and what was I doing with it. So there was drama with them. And Benson, like, defended me against them. That's quite a story. But when I was 14 and I hit the scene, I remember there were always chivalrous men protecting me. So, like, looking out for me. Even though I knew how to fight, I knew how to defend myself, I didn't have to. Ever. The most I ever had to do was run. When I lived in Golden Gate, this van followed me. This white van followed me, and I just booked it. And I jumped over a fence, and then over another fence, and then over another fence, and I went through my house, through the backyard to my house. And there was another time, there were times when I had to run to get away from danger, but it wasn't from the scene. So, for me anyways, and I cannot speak for anyone else, but there was always someone at the door that was like a chivalrous, like a kind of like an older brother energy that looked out for us. And I noticed that in every mosh pit, and we didn't call it mosh pit then, I think we called it skanking. In every single one of them, there was always the good big guy who would pick you up if you fell and make sure you're okay. It's like when I got that black eye, it wasn't intended. The guy jumped off the stage. He didn't mean for his boot to hit me. And as soon as people realized that I had been hit, they scrambled to take care of me, to like lift me up above the crowd and get me outside and get me ice and make sure I was okay. And I mean, that's beautiful, right? So I'm really grateful for that. And one time, Itchy, who had a very bad reputation, rescued me. I remember I was outside of Bookies. My friend Jeanette Bennett was panhandling. She had like a 12-inch mohawk at the time. She stood out. She was trying to panhandle. There were no people to panhandle to. Like, who are you panhandling with? It was like Bookies was in a neighborhood that was surrounded by XXX theaters, and there were sex workers, and like a Church's Fried Chicken, and this little Chinese restaurant, but there was no one. Like, who are you going to get money from, Jeanette? And so I went outside to get her to go inside. And she went inside, and some guy that was coming out of one of the XXX theaters started coming after me. And Itchy leapt at him like a freaking animal, like a feline animal. Itchy was not in great shape. Itchy was didn't look athletic, let's just put it that way. But he leapt on that person. And I saw him leaping, turned around and realized that he was stopping someone from harming me. That is a very unusual Itchy story. I mean, this is the man who threw his feces at the audience. Okay? And yet he leapt at someone, put himself in danger to protect me. I was a kid, I think I was like maybe 18. He had a reputation. I mean, he was a serious alcoholic, and he would pass out and snore. And I don't know if he did other drugs, but I'm sure he did other drugs. But he was very definitely an alcoholic. I think that's what killed him. But I remember before the first time I saw their show, I didn't know anything about shock therapy. I didn't know that they were really doing shocking things to the audience and on stage. I didn't know any of it. And I was just hanging out. And he came over to me and told me not to, you don't want to be up front. He's like, I know you're the kind of girl that likes to scoot your way to the front at shows. You don't want to be up front for my show. And I was like, why not? Like, that's what I always do. Like, every show that I've ever been to, I'm right at the stage. And he was like, no. You don't want to do that with my show. And I was like, huh. He's like, you know what? As a matter of fact, why don't you stand on the stage kind of off to the side, kind of behind us. You'll get a good, you want a good view, you want to hear it loud like you're in it, you can do it from the stage. I was like, okay. And then I saw what they did, and I was like, holy shit. Literally, shit. Thank God I wasn't in the front of the stage, because he took it out, and, you know, I mean, you've heard about his shows, right?
I've heard about him and Bob Madigan from Slaughterhouse.
Oh my God, Bob Madigan. Oh my God, I forgot about Bob Madigan.
And then Gigi Allen.
So my son's a big fan of Gigi Allen.
Oh my God.
I am not.
Oh, neither am I.
So my son did a Gigi, one of his first shows with one of his bands. So in Dead City Ponds, he put that band together, but he's the drummer. And then in Problem, he's the singer. And then in Pig, he's the bass player. So when he put Problem together, he was like, I'm going to do a show that's a Gigi Allen cover band, you know, Gigi Allen, honoring Gigi Allen. And I didn't hear about it until after, thank God, because I would have tried to talk him out of it. But he lived up to the Gigi Allen shenanigans. We'll leave it at that. I've just not been into that ever. My sister was at, so I was into Iggy Pop and MC5 and the Stooges and...
Oh, I love them. Me too, I love them.
Yes. And Patti Smith.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah. But I had not seen Itchy's band yet. And it was quite a shock. It was shock therapy, for sure. And I feel like he did it before Gigi Allen. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think... Anyways, my sister wasn't into punk at all. She was a normie. She ended up being corporate and whatever. You know, most families only get one family shaker-upper or black sheep, whatever you want to call us. And that was me. But she went to a Rolling Stones show, and Iggy was the opener. And the audience booed him. And there was broken glass on the stage that he rolled around in. And I was like, oh my God, Iggy Pop is radical. And then I saw Itchy, and I was like, oh my God. Slaughterhouse is gross. Yeah, he came to the Golden Gate House one time. Someone dropped him off because they had heard that if you're sick, Thomai knows about herbs and stuff, and she'll make you feel better. So somebody just dropped him off at the Golden Gate House, and I was the only one home. It was me and who else was home? I think maybe Kurt was home. Or no, it was John Artakis lived with us for a hot minute.
John Artakis, that's somebody else I want to talk to also.
He's taken a great photo of me off the record. He was known for being abusive. Yeah. When he lived with us, so when I like a song, I will play it over and over and over again. And everyone in my house was like that. All of the women at Golden Gate were like that. But Monique started to move out and stopped paying rent consistently. And we let John move in, John Artakis. And he hated that I played God Bless the Child by sung by Billie Holiday more than once. And he hated that I played the Attics. This is my life. This, that song. He hated that I played the Attics. He hated that I played Billie Holiday because I would play them on repeat. And one day I was listening to Billie Holiday and he came out and scratched my collectible 78.
Oh.
And I was like, what the hell are you doing?
Oh, I would have been mad.
I kicked him out. He's 6'4". I was like maybe 5'4" by then. I weighed, again, 110 pounds. I kicked his ass out, physically kicked his ass out. So, yeah, anyways, but he did turn me on to Divine. I'll give him that. He turned us all on to John Waters and Divine. And I got to see Divine in Ann Arbor.
Divine played at Todd's, too.
Yes. Oh, my God. Yes. Yes. Oh, my God. Memories. Yeah. So when I first moved out, the first person who took me in from when I was 14, and I was still kind of going back and forth to my mom's house here and there, I was walking in the Cass corridor, and a large, 6'4" without heels, now we would say trans woman, who did drag, black woman named Gigi, saw me walking on the street and was like, "Little girl, you gonna get your ass killed, get your ass in here," and took me in. And she was the first person that I got to stay with as an escape to my mom's house, from my mom's house, when I was a teenager. And I never forgot that. And I always had an open door policy for people who were runaways or who were, needed a place to crash or whatever. And because I was so intent on surviving the kind of asthma that I had, it's the kind of, when you hear about asthmatics who died of asthma, it's the kind I had. I still have it, but it's under control with modern medicine now. But I learned so much about alternative healing modalities that I was a little bit known for that too. And one night, somebody just kind of threw Richie at my door. And he was sick because he was drinking too much. And I don't know what drugs he was on. But, I gave him a salt water bath with herbs in it. And I made herbal concoctions for him. And I made him eat dandelion greens to support his liver. And, he stayed with us for 3 days while I nursed him to health, and my roommates put up with it. It was cuckoo. What a household that was. There was a point when, if you talk to Anthony Veed, he might remember this story. Glad was in the basement. Dave had a room upstairs, and they had covered all their windows with black garbage bags. And they would turn the TV on to static, and they would do acid. And they would get other people to do acid with them. And they would induce bad trips. And I was the opposite end. I would induce happy trips. And so they would, if somebody got too scary in their bad trip, they would bring them to me. And one night, they brought Anthony Veed to me, big, tall, goofy.
Yeah, I'm on
Anthony
the phone.
Veed. And he became like a little boy. And I showed him a daisy, Oj had bought me flowers, and I was like, let's look at this daisy. Look at the beauty of this daisy. And we looked at each petal, and we turned a bad trip into a good trip. So we did a lot of stuff like that at the Glad House and at the Golden Gate House. There was a time when I lived with Benson in Mexican Town, which I don't know why we called it that. There weren't very many Mexicans at the time, or Latinos in general, in Detroit. There was not a very big Mexican population there. But Benson had a place there, and there was an issue with that place, and then Benson ended up staying with me, and we've stayed with each other on and off over the years. God, we did so many crazy things. You know, we were just, one of the things that I didn't like to do drugs, but I liked sleep deprivation. And sleep deprivation is a drug. I didn't drink alcohol. I would drink pineapple juice to replace my electrolytes because I went to the clubs to dance and to listen to music and to hang out in community with my friends. It was really, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that I think we all felt safe in that scene. You know, it was like we weren't being judged.
Yeah.
I remember when I shaved my head and my eyebrows, and I went to Todd's that night, and I went up into the booth, and Charles was like, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful! You look like a goddess! You look like a queen! You look like..." He was just overjoyed, and he's like, "I'm going to play a song for you. I'm going to play 3 songs for you. Go dance." And I went and danced, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, you look so beautiful. So amazing. I love your bald head." And then the next day, I went to work at a record store, and they sent me home. They told me not to come back unless I had a wig. And I was like, oh, I was so in our subculture. Like, I would wake up at 5 p.m. You know what I mean? Like, if I didn't have work, we didn't leave the house till like 10 or 11, and we'd be out all night, and then sleep a couple hours, and then start all over again. The only time that I would be up during the day is if I had a job to get to. And I tended to have like 3 or 4 jobs to pay for bills and food and asthma medication. And to support my art habit. Art was like a habit. It was like other people had drugs, I had art. Making my performance art was like a drug.
Well, it seems like, and this is something that's different now with the scene, is that like, you get your shows now are like, you get them like on Fridays and Saturdays, you know, of like what they call a goth night, and I mean they don't really play anything goth, but it seems like they were doing stuff every day of the week back then.
Yeah, well, except for Tuesday. So that was the other thing, is that Todd's, St. Andrews Hall, City Club, Asylum, the Shelter, the Coronation Ballroom, these Elvins, Bookies, Tracks, these were our church. These were our temples, and we prayed to the deities of freedom and chaos and a counterculture expression. Those were our counterculture temples, and we needed them. We needed them because, well, I remember being driven off the road because my hair was blue. I remember people throwing cans at me because of the way I was dressed. I remember being attacked because someone couldn't tell if I was a boy or a girl. And that was not unique to me. I remember one of our punks had a 14-inch mohawk that he was very proud of, put together with like Elmer's glue and Coca-Cola syrup. You know, we didn't have the hair products that this generation has. We colored our hair with food coloring and beets and onions, like onion skins, and dye. We used like clothing dye for our hair. Hot Topic didn't exist yet. And you know, I remember that kid that had the 14-inch mohawk fell asleep on the bus, and the bus stopped by a country and western, like popular music country, like modern country and western music show. And somebody from that show broke his mohawk off.
Wow.
And he made it to the shelter, and everybody was just like, oh my God, like it was a real violation. I remember being in the car with Oj. So Oj, my ex-husband was an OG punk. Like he was into punk music starting in the 70s. Like he was right at the beginning of it. He's older. He was born in 58. And he was at the First Class show. He was at the Fear shows. He was at Bookies when the Stooges played. Like he's OG. And he did leopard print hair. He did big hair with all different colors. I remember being in a car and a cop saw his hair and pulled us over because of his hair. We weren't doing anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with our car. But we were a car full of punks. He made us all get out. He made us all show ID. You know, for what? Like, he couldn't even give us a ticket. He just stopped us because we looked weird. It wasn't as common back then. So when we went to the clubs, we could express any way we wanted. And with the exception of the skinheads, nobody fucked with you. Nobody was out to cause harm except for the racist skinheads. And the anti-skins formed to fight the skinheads. So even that was like a pretty reduced issue.
Could you talk a little bit about the skinheads? I mean, because in my book I do, I feel like if you're gonna write a history, like you have to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I feel like the skinheads were like the bad and the ugly of the scene.
Yes.
It can't just be we can't just romanticize the scene because it wasn't romantic and in many ways, and that's one aspect.
Correct. Yes. And also, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's not that pretty that we shouldn't romanticize. So the skinheads, my experience with them, I'm what they used to use the word swarthy a lot back in the 80s, which meant, which is what they said about people who are Greek or Italian or Persian or Indian, anything that wasn't white, right?
Yeah.
The skinheads hated us. They didn't like immigrants, so they didn't like Greek people. They were okay with Polish immigrants because they were mostly blonde-haired, and Russian and German immigrants, but they hated Greeks, Albanians, Persians, and some Italians. And they absolutely despised black people and Latinos. And they came after us. And I really got a taste of that when I shaved my head and I was wearing capes and makeup. Like I would do my eye makeup all the way around my head. I would do fan my eye makeup all the way around my head. I was clearly not a skinhead. I was goth, or, as Tony Drake would say, I was punkety rockety. And they took great offense to not only that, the fact that I wasn't whitey white. And then when I was dating, what was his name? Derek. I was dating a black man in the scene who wore skirts. Oh, that was the other thing. He wasn't just black, he was black and he wore skirts. He was butch, but he wore skirts. So they came after me. I was in Ann Arbor, and there were about 5 or 6 of them. They saw me in the distance, and I ended up not being able to go to that show. I don't remember what band was playing. I didn't get to the show because I was running. I ran and hid from the skinheads. When I was at Todd's one night, you would go down some steps you would go towards the basement to get to where they had the movies in the other bar, to get to the unisex bathroom. And the bathroom was to the right, and there was a wall. So you go down the stairs, there's a wall and bathroom. And I went down the stairs, and there was a whole bunch of them waiting for me. I only got 2 steps down, and I saw that there were like maybe 6 or 7 skinheads waiting for me. And they started to come at me, but Benson was behind me. And Benson was like, "Oh, please let me take all my anger and aggression out on you." And he literally took off his headdress. He was wearing a tunic and jewelry and this fancy tulle headdress. And he like took off his headdress. He's, "Darling, hold this for me." And literally, as they came at me, he was picking them up and throwing them at the wall. They were bouncing off the wall. They'd come back, and he just kept throwing them up against the wall like they were nothing. Like they were a basketball.
Damn. You know, I've heard stories. I mean, my mom told me that Benson could fight, you know.
Oh, you don't want to fuck with Ben. I tell people you don't want to fuck with me. You don't want to fuck with Benson, okay?
Oh, yeah.
He was a fierce, and, you know, we developed the term battle drag to define the kind of drag that he did. It was very Thunderdome inspired, you know. Or maybe Thunderdome was inspired by Benson. I don't know which way it went.
You want to hear something funny? Me and Benson were having a conversation on Facebook. When I first told him, I was like, you know, I'm Michelle's kid, and I'm writing a book about the scene. And he's like, I'm kind of writing a book about like my memoirs, or it was autobiography or something. And then he was like telling me, he's like, I was thinking about writing a book about the scene. And I told him, I said, Benson, if you're going to write a book about the scene, I don't want to mess with your mojo or anything, you know, and interfere with it. And he's like, no, child. He's like, I want you to do it. You know, I think it's great. Somebody your age is doing it and wanting to do it. And we were sitting having this conversation. He told me, he's like, I used to do tarot, and he's like, I'll tell you what, I'll sum it up in a sentence. He's like, I used to fuck straight guys and fight Nazis and tell fortunes. I said, that's a perfect title for your book.
Yeah. So that was one of those situations where, you know, the skinheads, and, you know, Benson and I are brother and sister. We don't look at all alike. We don't have any genetic connection, but we are brother and sister. He adopted me, and I reluctantly was like, all right, fine. It was like that. Like, he saw me when I was 16, and I was like, you know, I just didn't know what to make of him. And we ended up just being, you know, like, we ended up being family. We have lived together. He's my son's uncle. He, you know, when my son was 10 years old and he had striped hair, that was his Uncle Ben. He's my son's uncle. Yeah. They love each other. When I realized that my son was getting discriminated against for being the son of a single mom, Benson would come and talk to the principal and be like, she's not single, she's not alone. Don't think you can just get away with shit, bitch. Like, he was like, you know, and people know not to mess with me because I'm very spiritual, and I will do the darkest I'll go is a binding spell, binding someone's negative energy, and I put a lot of protection around people. Anyone I care for has a protection spell around them. That's as far as I dabble, as far as like binding negative energies, as far as I go with that kind of stuff. Otherwise, I'm usually working on generating joy and grace with ease. and peace. And it's been like that my whole life. You know, teaching yoga, teaching meditation, whatever. And sometimes I would see that shit was coming and not believe it. When I was younger, I would know something was coming and not believe it. And then it would come. I'd be like, oh, I need to listen to that voice within. I need to listen to that. Because every time I don't, I get a big doof upside my head. I remember that there were times when I was so open that it was almost like I could hear and feel everyone's thoughts and feelings. And I had to learn how to tune that ability like a radio station and tune frequencies in and out. I've always been able to identify, my gift since I was a little girl was being able to identify people's talents. It comes in real handy as a director and producer. I can usually identify what instrument someone can or should or does play. I can usually identify what crew position they'd be best at or that they're actually in. Like I can spot a grip a mile away, I can spot art department, etc. And those of us who are who can play multiple instruments, I can see it. And I will often share it. And people feel seen because of that and thrive in my presence with that. So I believe that every time I've mentored, I've been mentored. So I've had a lot of mentoring going back and forth with people, and it's been lovely. And that started all the way back in the scene. That started way back when. And yeah, anyways, but the skinheads, back to the real darkness of the scene. So yeah, they tried to kill me multiple times. And there was a one time, again, I was trained to defend, to take care of myself. And there were 3 skinheads. My boyfriend had just gone in it was at the City Club. Oh my God. Sometimes, once in a while, the City Club would be totally empty. There'd be like, you've been in there. It's a huge club.
Oh, yeah.
I remember sometimes it'd be like Derek May up there. By the way, when electronic music first started, people hated that shit. People booed Derek May. People threw stuff at the TJ booth. Like when Depeche Mode first came out, people were like, what is this electronic shit? And there were people who would literally fight about drum machines, like not just verbal fight, or they would physically fight over, the concept of a drum machine or a real drummer. And I remember one night, my boyfriend and I were there. There were just maybe 7 or 8 other people. I remember Bronski Beat was on, the song by Bronski Beat, and these 3 skinheads saw me, and I was like, fuck! So because I was small, my stepdad taught me how to attack with ultimate force. So if somebody's going to attack me, I'm going to go for the kill, because you're bigger than me. It's very likely I'm not going to be able to just subdue you. And so I try not to fight. So your first step in self-defense is to frickin' run. I ran outside, all the way outside to the street, in front of, what was that restaurant called? Ugh, it was awful. I think the health department closed it. The restaurant that was in the same building as the City Club. It was like a diner.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've seen it plenty of times.
Yes. So I was all the way out in front of that restaurant. And they caught up to me, and I was like, fuck it. And I just started fighting them. And I remember one of them was bleeding, and I heard a voice in my head that said, get off of him, you're going to kill him. Like my own voice saying, get off him, you're going to kill him. And then someone from the restaurant came out and broke it all up. And I just went back inside the club and kept dancing like nothing happened. There were like 3 skinheads on the ground, bleeding. The guy from the restaurant was like, "What the fuck? Oh my God, oh, I'm going to call the cops on you guys." It was very rare for people to call the cops in Detroit, by the way. And I just ran back inside and continued dancing like nothing happened. I went up to the DJ booth and I requested a song from Derek, and I went back and was dancing with my friends. And yeah, that was really weird. Yeah, the skinheads. There weren't that many of them, as I recall. And then the anti-skins formed and rose up. And that was a mind fuck for them, because the anti-skins dressed just like the skinheads. But they were brown skin, black, they were all different ethnicities. That's the only way you could tell the difference. And there were some white kids in the anti-skin group as well. And they would fight sometimes. And sometimes clubs would have to shut down the night because of a fight between the skins and the anti-skins.
Wow.
Yeah. They sucked. Skinheads suck.
Yeah.
I can't believe they still exist.
Yeah. I mean, they used to be, when they started out, it used to be like they were into ska music, And there wasn't any of that the racist stuff. And in Britain, the fascist party took a hold of it. The National Front, that's what it was called, took hold of all of that.
Yeah.
And appropriated it. And I don't know how it got here. I don't know how it got here or why it came here.
Well, one of the things to be aware of the 80s is that so we had this beautiful man, Jimmy Carter.
Oh, yes.
A good man who owned the racism he was raised with, did the fucking work. This is in the 70s. Put solar panels on the White House, and then at that fateful, he gave a speech, a State of the Union, and he said, we must end our dependency on oil. And that was it. The oil companies backed the Republican Party and destroyed his campaign and made him out to seem ineffective and incapable, and none of that was true. Some of the greatest things that we have in this nation are due to Jimmy Carter's presidency. But he lost, and the evil Ronald Reagan puppet, the Reagan administration took over, and that has led to MAGA. That has led to Trump.
Yep.
And skinheads came with it to the United States, to Detroit, of all fucking places. Detroit, the Motor City, Motown, where black music fed our souls, where so much of the activism was from the black community, black American community, and where most people, like, one of the things I love about Detroit is we have so many brunettes. I'm not alone there. We're Italians and Greeks and Arabs. We have the largest Arabic population outside of Saudi Arabia, and Persians and Albanians and Chaldeans. I've never met a Chaldean outside of Detroit. How dare they? It was just so bizarre. Like, I don't know. It might be good for you to try to find someone who used to be part of the skinhead party.
I want to, and I've wanted to, like, try to find somebody, but I don't know. See, I mean, at the same time, I don't know, like, if anybody would want to talk about their experiences, and I don't know how many of them have actually, like, given up, changed, that are not still Nazis, because there's some people, I mean, that I I feel like are probably somewhere in the scene and probably still believe a lot of that stuff, but I feel like a lot of the people that were in it, I feel like they don't want to talk about it and they want to move on. And I could understand, and I could understand if they maybe not wanting to be in the book either or being interviewed, because that's like a period of your life that if it was me, I wouldn't want to be proud of, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought about trying to find somebody and interviewing them. I mean, I've thought about trying to interview like somebody that was a Sharp or an Anti-Skin.
That would be easier. Ravi, do you know Ravi?
Ravi,
Ravi?
What's the last name?
That's another thing about the scene, is that we all know each other by our punk names or just our first names.
Well, if you remember his name, send it to me.
We're Facebook friends. He comments on my book often, so I'll reach out to Ravi. He lives in London.
Okay.
But I'll reach out to Ravi. He might have something to share about the Anti-Skins. And then Odell would be somebody for you to talk to.
Oh, yeah, Odell. Odell, yeah, of course. I mean,
Odell helped me with the contract for my son's band's, the documentary that's being made by Beyond the Streets. Odell helped me with the contract, because the craziest thing is that some of us went on to be like serious corporate, like he's in charge of the music division at Universal or Sony or something like that. Like, he's really big. He's he went to law school, you know?
Yeah. I told him I want to interview him, and I asked him, I said, would you be okay with it? He's like, yes. And I haven't scheduled anything with him, but he kind of left me on red with my message, but he did say yes. And he's been following my posts, you know, that I make. And
I'll talk to him.
All right.
We're friends. We hung out in New Orleans. He came to New Orleans. We hung out for a bit.
Well, I want to ask him about his bands, too, that he was in. He was in some band that was like...
Majesty Press.
Yeah, one of those was Shoegaze, and I was like, was Shoegaze band in Detroit? I'm like, that's something that's got to be covered, you know? That's something unique.
Yeah, he's definitely someone for you to talk to, because he's still in music. Like, he's a big shot.
Yes, and I play music, and I have kind of a band going, but I can't seem to find a bass player, but I'm kind of on the goth side with what my stuff that I play, my band. But yeah, I'd like to talk to him.
One of my son's bands, Pig, that's led by the lead vocalist is Blanca. Their stuff is hardcore, but they just recorded 4 songs with Tim Armstrong from Rancid and Operation Ivy. They recorded 4 songs, and like the first song reminded me of Susie and the Banshees, and another song reminded me a little bit of like, oh, this must be R.E.M's daughter, and then another song was like, this is a little Evanescence. It's like they went from hardcore to like this melodic. She has a beautiful voice. In her hardcore band, Pig, People Affected by Greed, she's like, you know, real hardcore, like screaming, yelling, cutting the top of her head, bleeding on audience members. Very G.G. Allen, very Slaughterhouse. Not with poop, but with blood. And now they're doing like this melodic, beautiful. I'm so happy. I'm like, oh, finally I can listen to your music. Maybe it's my age, but I'm not as into hardcore, you know, and I've always liked more, you know, sound-wise. I liked the lyrics that Dead Kennedys provided, but as far as like dancing around the house, I listen to other stuff.
Oh,
you know.
I get into it. I mean, I have a treadmill, and I run like, I don't know, 5 miles a day. And really how I do it is this speaker.
Wow.
And this speaker, this Bluetooth speaker. And I play like the Damned, the Dead Kennedys,
yes.
Susie and the Banshees. And then I go into glam rock. I play Bowie and The Sweet, Mott the Hoople. Yes. And then sometimes I throw in some rockabilly in there, you know.
Yes.
And I don't know. I love it, and it's just it does something to my brain. My brain's like I think because of the music going, it gets my endorphins going in my brain, and I'm like, I'm loving this, and it's that intensity. Because my mom, I'll tell you something funny. We keep talking about the Dead Kennedys. My mom took me when I was like 9 to go see Jello. Biafra is his band. I'll show you the video. There's video of me somebody put me on stage, and you see him singing, and I'm next to him, and I'm little, and I got my head shaved completely bald, and I'm like sitting there. I'm not singing or anything, but I'm just up there, and I'm like, you know, just standing there. And he's like, he says something to me. I think it was like, he's like, when you become of age, young man, he's like, and we have to hold the Bush people accountable. It's going to be your job to do so.
I love that.
And I was like, me and him sat and we talked about politics. Here I am, 9 years old. Do you remember the band Inside Out? Karen Neal.
I remember that band.
Karen Neal. She dated Jello for a little bit of time, but she took me back there. She's like, here, she's like, here, I'm taking you to go meet Jello. You know, she told my mom, she's like, I'm taking Crichton to go backstage and meet Jello Biafra. And here I am, 9 years old, and here I'm talking to him. We're just talking about politics, and we disagree on everything, and you know, we start talking about politics and history, and he's like, what somebody told me, like, because as I was doing this project. Somebody that was there at that show, I reconnected with them, and they're like, you know what? After that, it was like he could not stop talking about like how cool of a kid you were, and how that more kids. There needs to be more kids like you. And I'm like, and I that you
gave him hope for the future.
Yeah, that flattered me. You know.
I love that.
So I mean, yeah, I don't even know what we were talking about, but we got into this tangent. Did you ever
get into Crash Worship?
I've heard of them, but I don't think I've listened to them.
If you ever hear about their shows with the so-called quote midget little person, that was my son when he was 7 on stage. It wasn't a little person; it was a 7-year-old boy.
Wow!
It was my son. And that band, if you look into like what Dead City Funks is all about and what their shows are like, if you get to watch the documentary or read the article or whatever, or follow them on Instagram, you'll see the influence. So Crash Worship, we were all in, you couldn't identify us. Like we had like body makeup and face makeup, and we would wear like a different theme, like all gold or all green or whatever, right? And then the music was ritual. It was a ritual band. So there was like drums, multiple drums. Dreeky was the main drummer. And like one time she was suspended from the ceiling with a circle thing around her waist of drums, and she would just spin around and play the drums. And then there's like sometimes a trumpet, sometimes a side trombone, just like all different weird instruments and lights. And there was always a fire that people would like throw stuff they were getting rid of from their life into, like ritualistically. And then we would have like, some of us would be up on stretchers being carried through the audience, squirting wine on people. There were firecrackers going off. This is what my son was raised in. Like I said, he was 7 on stage. And now if you look at his shows, there's always a fire, almost always a fire. There's fireworks. There's graffiti writers like lighting their paint cans, you know, that aerosol is flammable, so they'll make a torch out of it. And of course the LA cops come and whatever. But I think it's interesting. Like, there's a whole other book to be made by you. So do this one first, and then your second book can be about second generation.
That would be a cool one to do.
You know, and start it with you at age 9 talking to Jello. And then interview my son, because my son's got some stories from his childhood.
Okay. I think that could happen. Yeah, I mean...
And then do this book first, and then from the success of this book, you can do the second generation book. I think...
Well, what I'd like to do with this book, too, is I'd like to make a kind of like a... I guess it'd be like a coffee table kind of companion piece. I don't know if that's...
Yeah.
But it would be like filled with pictures and flyers. And,
yes.
And like... Kind of like, you know, like those coffee table books you see that have like, you know, you get and they're filled with pictures and, you know, like I just got one that's on art, you know, and it's got like all kinds of art pieces in it, and you know.
They just put one out on Dead City that's like that, and they didn't price it like you'll be able to price it like a typical coffee table book. They priced it because it's a punk band. They only priced it at $35. And I was like, dude, this is like $100 book. I'm looking at all the photos, it's beautiful. And they're like, yeah, but we want people to be able to get it. We want our fans to enjoy this book. It's for them. It's not for collectors. Fuck them. I was like, well, okay, that's great. But, okay, so for sure, maybe when I'm in town, maybe we can arrange this. I want you to meet Tim and see Tim's archives. Because Tim did a lot of flyers. He was known for doing flyers and album covers. The Laughing Hyenas.
Yep.
Album covers. He did stuff for Sonic Youth. He did stuff for Majesty Crush. Like, you need to talk to Tim. And Tim is a collector. He collects things. He collects old books, and he keeps all of his crazy art.
Okay.
So, and he did a lot of Slaughterhouse's stuff. I know Bob Madigan because of Tim, or knew Bob Madigan because of Tim. Yeah, I got to get you over to Tim's.
Well, you know what, Thomai, you're not the only one that's told me about Tim. Sterling actually was funny because I saw Sterling it had to have been about a week ago. I saw him on a Friday, and I'm like, you know, he's kind of been like, we kind of become buddies, you know, I'd say, and he's been like really interested in the book, and like he likes to look and see how I'm doing, and I like to talk to him because Sterling's an old timer, you know, he's been doing it a long time, but in the scene, you know, even before the punk scene came about, and well, you know, he's like, well, how's it going? Who have you interviewed? Who are you gonna interview? And then he's like, who have you not gotten hold of? And I'm like, well, I haven't gotten hold of DJ Diana, and I'm like, and I'm Facebook friends with her, but she doesn't really, she kind of doesn't want to do the interviews, but she's kind of warming up to it because my friend who's close to my age, she works at the same place she does, and she's kind of like talking her into it, kind of like saying, you know, you've got all these stories, but anyway, I went through names.
She's got to represent. Women need to be represented.
Yeah, and I mean, she goes back to the Stooges, go back to seeing the Stooges as really young. Yeah. And told me all these stories, but I was like, Niagara I haven't heard from. He's like, Niagara would be a hard one to get, but I'll try. And I was like, okay. And then I said,
Tim still sends me gifts.
Tim Caldwell, and he's like, here. He's like, I'll give you Tim's phone number, but he's like, he uses a landline. He's old school, you know. He's like, here. I'm gonna call Tim right now. And he called Tim and left a voicemail. He's like, this is Sterling, and I've got this young man here who wants to write a book about our scene, and I want to have him come out here and meet you, and you know, but yeah,
right,
I mean,
so let's do this.
But I still get gifts from Tim.
Yeah. still sends me gifts. Like, I will randomly get a book in the mail from Tim. Like, literally 7 months ago, I got another book from Tim. And keep in mind, I live in 3 different places, 3 different cities. Like, how he manages to find me and find... So, I feel like if I give him a heads up that I'm coming to Detroit, maybe I can, like, introduce you and then leave the meeting and let you guys have your say.
No, you should stay.
He's got a lot to show.
Yeah.
And a lot to say. I'll let you do your job, and I'll just be like, okay.
Then maybe you could. When you go see Benson, I could come with you.
Yeah, that would be great too.
Because I would bring my mom. I don't know how much company he's gonna want. I don't know if my mom's gonna want to go, but I'd like for him to see my mom. I told him that. I'm like, you've seen each other in a while, and you know, that would be good. Because I tell you, my mom told me that, like, Benson, I think he helped show my mom how to do some of her makeup.
Yeah, he inspired her. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. My mom was a makeup artist, so I came to the scene with real makeup. Like everybody else, I would take makeup from my mom's, bathroom. But everyone else would have this, like, Maybelline eyeliner that you had to use a lighter to soften up so that it would draw on your eyelid. And I had Estee Lauder. People were like, what? Are you a rich girl? No, I'm not a rich girl. My mom sells Estee Lauder. And they had this makeup primer that was white face. And I was like, this is my new thing, you know. But yeah, Benson and I used to do the craziest makeup. One time, there's a photo of Tim doing my makeup for a performance art piece that we photographed. Joseph Nadu took photos. There's also photos that from Tim and I collaborated on a couple things that Tim probably still has the photos of. God, you're reminding me of all this stuff, honey. This is going back 40 years, okay?
Well, I'm glad if I can jog your memory, and
you really are.
And if it brings back good memories, I'm glad.
Yes. Well, then there's also, like, there's other things that aren't typical punk stories, you know? Like, Eva Scrivo dropped out of high school and started going to Bella's School of Beauty, cosmetology, whatever, and would show up at the Golden Gate house in the morning with Jeanette. They were like little puppies asleep outside our door, and we would bring them in, and then they'd stay with us for a few weeks, and then they'd disappear again. There was the time that the people who lived downstairs thought we were witches because we would be gone all night. We wouldn't leave until nighttime. We were all dressed in black with crazy, wild hair. So the people who lived downstairs, they were Lebanese Catholics, and they were scared of us. And I remember one night, Eva Benson and we were at Ted's on the Park, and then we went from Bookies to Ted's on the Park to our house on Golden Gate, and we were locked out, and we were pounding on the door trying to get in. And the woman of the house downstairs was like, all we want is pee and quiet. And I started laughing. And knowing, my mother has an accent. She couldn't say sheets. She would say shits. So to me, that was like, it just reminded me of my mom. And she got hella mad, and her husband came out with a rifle. He tried to hit me in the gut with the rifle. I pushed the rifle away. Benson kicked the door open. Eva and I went inside. Benson, because he kicked the door open, it was broken, so he picked up the couch and placed it in front of the doorway. And then the people downstairs, his son came home, and he started shooting at us with an Uzi from out front.
Oh boy.
We were hiding behind a table I had a lighter and Aquanet hairspray to use as a weapon. Eva had the one kitchen knife that we owned in her hand, and I called the cops, and they were like, has someone been shot? Is someone shot? Has someone been shot? I'm like, there's a bullet hole behind my head in the wall. No human body has been shot yet, but they're still shooting at us. You need to send someone. She was like, ma'am, has someone been shot? Or like, they didn't give a fuck. And then randomly, my dad and my brother, I don't know how they found out. I know that at some point my dad was having me followed because I lied to my family about where I was living. I said I was in Royal Oak in a nice neighborhood. I was in the same neighborhood as the Young Boys Incorporated instead, which is a gang. And anyways, my dad and my brother came and pulled their guns out, and finally the cops came after that. And I was able to go in, get my albums, and move out. And I think I moved in with Benson that week. But yeah, little stories like that, or like sweet stories like, we were obsessed with Harold and Maude, and I got the cassette, and we would just listen to the soundtrack from Harold and Maude. Do you know that movie?
Oh, yeah, I've seen that movie many times.
Yeah, I love it. I love Maude. And so we were goths, so we loved Harold and Maude. And we would just drive around all night listening and singing along to Cat Stevens. It's not very punk rock, it's punkity rockety. You know? Like, just get lost in the city, driving around. One time we found this abandoned building. We went in and it turned out to be Black Masons church, temple, whatever, and they had all this astrology stuff on the walls, and a lot of pyramids and astrology stuff, and we're like, whoa, what have we stumbled into? We would go into, when Hudson's closed downtown, we went into the abandoned Hudson's and would find like clothes that were left there, and it was pretty wild and also very sweet. And the main takeaway is that it was a counterculture where it's okay to not be normal and mainstream. And there was an unspoken understanding, because we didn't have the emotional intelligence that your generation has. It was unspoken. It was an unspoken understanding that we were all family, that it was okay, that you didn't have to be fucking normal, that even someone who did as gross shit as Itchy did could show up at my house and I would do everything I could to heal him before sending him back out on stage, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I was spoon feeding him. He was passed out, and I was like I did it with Dave Landrum too, putting honey under his tongue and making different concoctions with dandelion and ginger and beets and milk thistle and nettle. Like, I was doing all this crazy stuff because they had exhausted their livers, frankly.
You were a lifesaver.
That's the side of the scene that people don't understand. That unless you were in it, like, it's not the romanticized folk rock, buck the system. No, we made our own system. We made a counterculture society. We were our own subculture, and we took care of each other. And when we had to deal with normies, it was freaky. When I got pregnant, I was the first one of all my friends to get pregnant. No one else had kids for like another decade. I mean, when I got pregnant and kept the baby, he was a choice. I remember thinking, I don't want to dye my hair because I don't want it to go into, I didn't want it to affect the baby. But then suddenly normal people were talking to me, like in the grocery store line. And I was like, oh my God, who are these people? Why are they talking to me? I hadn't dealt with mainstream society in years. And suddenly they're acting like I'm one of them. I immediately went home and dyed my hair fuchsia to get them at bay. And I remember people saying, oh, you're doing it for attention. And I was like, no, I'm doing it to repel stupid and weak. I'm doing it to repel mainstream thinking and mainstream people. And it works. And a quote from Eva Scrivo, who was probably one of the most beautiful women our scene has ever known. She said, my dad asked her, we stopped by my dad's house once because I needed something for my car. We were on our way out, and we looked like goth princesses, right? And my dad was like, why are you always dressed in black? You're not going to a funeral. Why are you dressed in black? Are you satanic? And she said, no, Mr. Hatsios, we just have a different perception of beauty. And I was like, that's my new line. I have a different perception of beauty than you. She was right. Our perception of beauty was very different. You know? We were super goth, and it freaked the fuck out of mainstream people. It scared them. They didn't know what to make of us. But we could identify, and then Julian said to my dad, it's how we identify each other. We can identify each other in a room. We wear black from head to toe, and we can identify each other. This is how we know each other. Our weird looks is how we know each other. And it was like, oh, okay, because, you know, he gets it. He was Greek. He came over here. He hung out only with Greeks for the longest time. It's a safety thing. So I think that's something that I hope people understand as we go into, you know, what's happening in America right now, what's happening in the United States. We need to form our own countercultures.
Yeah, we needed to bring it back to a lot of, like, I feel like how there's things that I wish that it was like it was, where it was like you had something to do every week, you know, and then I wish, I mean, the music too, because they at the goth nights they don't really play anything that's goth, you know, that's like Bauhaus, Susie and the Banshees, or Sisters of Mercy, or any of those bands. I don't really hear any of that. It's all...
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Those are like the popular bands. You're not playing Sisters of Mercy? What?
No. But Thomai, I do have to wrap this up in just...
Yeah, I just realized we've been talking for 4.5 hours, baby.
I love it. I enjoy it. This is what...
3 hours, sorry, 3 hours.
This is how I like to do my interviews, is like this, conversations, you know?
Yeah, me too. I interview, you know, murderers and homicide detectives and judges and state attorneys and victims, families, and I try to keep it as conversational as possible, because things will come up that you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
And it's more natural.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be like an interrogation either, you know, where it's just...
Yeah.
It's just this, and there's no room to, like, dialogue. I had somebody tell me my questions are really open-ended, you know? It was like a compliment.
Yeah, you're very good. You know, you're a natural. You're a natural storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
And you probably play guitar and piano, but you're really a storyteller. So it doesn't matter what instrument or medium you use, you're a storyteller. And that is a very important position in society.
Yes.
It's very important, very needed, very necessary, and very appreciated by me. So I really appreciate that you're taking the time to interview me and my friends, my crazy, kooky friends, who, some of which I only knew in the scene, but they felt like family because I saw them every day of the week, except, you know, sometimes Tuesdays.
Well, your friends have all been nice to me, and to me they're like family to me, because that's, I'll tell you, you know, the Romans and the Greeks had their mythology. They had their Olympian gods and Zeus and Athena, and the Norse had their gods and goddesses, and you know, And I feel like my mythology was growing up was Todd's, the Greystone, Bookies, the Shelter, and all these stories that my mom told me. It was like I would hear it, and I'd hear about these people like Itchy and Bob Madigan and Benson and Sterling and all these people, and it was like I was always interested, and then it was like I didn't think that this would be what I would write my book about, and then it just happened. It was just like the City Club closed, and then it was like I got disillusioned with the scene here and the people my age who are in the scene, because I've had bad experiences, and that's a long story to go into, but I was like, you know what? I started to think about my mom telling me about the Leader Knocked and about Sterling, and I looked him up, and I joined the Todd's group, and I asked about pictures, and I just kind of was like, I started really wanting to connect with people that were, Gen Xers that were in the scene and were doing this before I was, because I really liked the same music, and I like the fashion and stuff, and so it eventually came down to me saying, you know what, nobody's written a book about the goth punk and new wave scene, or as I call it, the underground music scene, and I said that's what I'm going to do.
It was underground. Here's the thing that, and this happens when people get older. You have other responsibilities, so I was obsessed with music. I read the New Music Express, and what was the other rag? There were like 2 or 3 magazines that came out of London, and one that came out of New York, and they were all with, I would read about a band, and then I would go all the way to Canada, all the way to Chicago, when I was 14, to get the album and listen to it. I didn't even know if I was going to like it. I just read about it and needed to go get it. It was very underground. This stuff was not on the radio. It was not in a regular record store. I started selling it at Harmony House, and I almost got fired for selling it at Harmony House. And I was like, it's just rock and roll, man. It's just rock and roll. What's wrong with it? And the fact that I could sell this Long Coil compilation to classical fans, I was like, this was my big triumph. And I think that's something that, you're right, it is the underground music scene. And because I'm 60 and I don't collect music anymore, and I have other responsibilities, I have no idea, other than my son's bands and what some of my mentees listen to. I have no idea what's cool and underground now. I have no idea who's doing what now. That's for a new generation to figure out. And for you, that you fell in love with music from our time, and it's weird to me that there isn't more club nights for you to go to. Like, what are kids your age that aren't into our music? Where do they go?
Well, they used to go to the City Club, and see, the thing is, at the City Club they would play techno, emo, metal, and this really new industrial, nothing old school. And I would just sit there, and I'd be bored out of my mind, because I'm like, this doesn't appeal to me. And then really, they moved the City Club to a place called the New Dodge Lounge, and they call it Strays now, and that's where they do it. And I mean, occasionally you get stuff that goes on at Smalls, where, which is in Hamtramck, and they do DJ.
I remember that.
But then there's a guy that about every month or so, he does this event, and he will play all the old school stuff. And I managed to get my mom to go to it, and we dance around, and it's glam rock, punk, goth, post-punk,
Nice.
new wave, early industrial, and that's really it. I mean, not a lot of people go out who are like, I don't know. I guess let me take that back. I mean, I don't know how many people that are older go out to shows. I try to encourage people, you know, and I know that like when you get up there in a certain age, it's tough to do certain things, or you don't want to do certain things. I try to encourage, but as for people my age, the thing now with goth is that like when you have Instagram and TikTok, and you know you can dress up on there and take pictures of yourself, and you can just pretty much talk to people on there, and that's pretty much kind of become the new thing, you know.
That's not the same as real life, though. Have you thought about something that they do in LA, and I have not been to it yet, but many of my mentees go, is like they'll do an 80s night or 80s underground music night. And because it's specifically 80s, then you get different generations out. Maybe something like that would make sense. And I know they were doing Todd's reunions, right? What happened to are they still doing those?
Yeah, they do the Todd's reunions. They do them like seasonally. So they're going to do one. It's going to be one coming up in the summer.
Okay.
And I'll be at that, you know. And that's where I usually run into our Kayla at, you know. And we sit and we have great conversations. But yeah, I mean, there's not much.
Speaking of artists, Kayla's an artist.
Oh yeah.
Kim's always made art.
Yes, Benson told me about her being in a band for a little bit, and then
her and Mike Dead.
Yeah,
is Mike Dead still around?
Yeah, he's on Facebook. I'm trying to reach out to him, but
I haven't talked to him in years. I love Mike Dead so much.
Yeah, I haven't heard back from him. But she told me she was a writer, but I told her, I'm like, I want to interview you because
her writing is like, you know, Kathy Acker. She's a subversive writer.
I'm familiar.
So yeah, she's along the lines of like Kathy Acker.
But she wants to. I was at first. She kind of was like, I said, you know, I'm writing a book, and you know, she was like, well, I'll see, you know, I'll see, you know. It was kind of at first, I don't know yet. And we sat down, and I had a conversation with her. I said, you know, this is what I want to do with the book. And I explained it to her. And then she gave me some pointers. She's like, well, you should do it not just about the bands. You should do it about the scene goers. And then it was like her, and then like Benson was like, well, you know, there's something else you should talk about, is you should talk to all of the women that have been in the scene. You should highlight that too. And it was like I was like that, you know, that was on the tip of my tongue, and I didn't think about it until but it was in my head, but it was like I couldn't pull it out, and he pulled it out for me. You know,
Good.
And I was like, yeah, I'm like, that's great. And then it was like it was like we had this conversation, and then she was like, I texted her a few weeks ago. I was like, yeah, I'm like, let's you know, I'd like to get together with you and do an interview. And she's like, yeah, she's like, I'm working on a project right now, but I'm writing stuff down. I'm excited to do this, and I'm going to I have to write down some things, and I'm going to write down people that I really want to talk about and things I want to talk about. But she's like, I'm excited and I want to do this.
She's so much more organized than I am.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the park with my godson, and I was like, oh my God, I have to go do an interview. my godson's dad was like, what are you going to talk about? I'm like, the punk city. He's like, yeah, but what about it? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you don't know? Like, you haven't thought about what you want to say? I was like, no. I trust the storyteller. He'll ask me questions, and we'll have a conversation.
Well,
Probably,
I asked you, we got to about 3.5 hours worth, and I appreciate that. I like that. I like having these kind of conversations. You know what? It reminds me of my grandma, when she was alive, her and my great aunt, when they were both alive, that's what they would do. My great aunt would call my grandma on the telephone every so often, and they would sit on the phone for 3 or 4 hours, and I just don't know what I would hear them talk about things every once in a while, but it would just be like about Tennessee or about like this or that, and I would just be like, what do you guys talk about, you know? And she'd say all kinds of things, you know, and it was like it was something to me. And then it's like, now I'm doing this, and I'm like, I realize, like, I understand, like, what my grandma was how she was able to come up and talk about things, because she, you know, when you get to talking with somebody, you can find things to talk about. And I really appreciated this interview. You know, I've had
me too. I really appreciate you.
I've done about like 5 or 6 interviews this week, and I've enjoyed all of them, you know, and I'm trying to get as many people as I can, and I'm trying to fill up my weeks, because I don't really have much going on right now, unless I've got to take my mom somewhere, or I've got to go to some appointment, you know, then I'm not able to do it. Or if I got to do some kind of chore, then I usually take that day off to do everything I need to do, so I can make the rest of the week.
This is lovely.
Something, and it's been lovely.
This is a public service you're doing. It's lovely. I'm very grateful. I'm glad to know another storyteller, and I can't wait to meet you in person. And Benson and I, when we get together in a room, you're going to hear more stories. Like, I'm not even remembering half the stuff, but they just haven't come to mind. But you'll have so much.
We'll send him a message and tell him, you know, you talked to me, and
I will.
And maybe
we just talked yesterday, and I told him that I was coming into town. He's like, okay, well, you need to stay here for a couple days. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, all right. I'm going mostly because my sister's getting surgery. I want to help her out. And I haven't seen my bio family in like 5-6 years. And to see Benson, and we need to see each other. It's been too long. So, yes. And we'll hang out with you.
All right.
It's going to be fun. All right, honey.
All right.
And I'll reach out to Tim and let him know to talk to you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, honey. Take care.
All right, yes, you too.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.